Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to an impromptu edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast, presented to you by our friends at FanDuel. And there's some breaking news out there in the college football world, and yet another team is looking for a new head coach. And this is a head coach that Notre Dame fans are fairly familiar with, as he was the second longest tenured coach in Notre Dame history. It's easy to rack up wins when you do that. But anyway, Brian Kelly has officially been fired from Louisiana State University. I believe his buyout is still being negotiated, but it's over $50 million. And it's probably not going to end up that way, would be my guess. So I'm joined by my guys here. I got Brian Driscoll over there. I've got Trevor Trowbridge down there. It's like the Brady Bunch at the beginning. And then I've got Sean Davis, who has a message to everyone out there to just shop smarter. It's very important.
Yes.
Pick the correct aisle and make sure you shop smarter.
Yes.
Boys, I mean, look, this is the news of the day right now. We are here to talk about the news of the day. And because, you know what? Just go for it, fellas. I'm not even going to pick who gets to go first.
Because Vince is valuing job security tonight.
Yeah.
He knows where this one is going. And Trevor and Sean were like, nope. Vince, I can't hear you. Go to Brian. I can't hear you.
Vince, you're very smart. Start with the Hall of Famer.
Oh, that's right.
Start with the Hall of Famer.
Good call on that one, Sean Davis.
Thank you.
Hall of Famer, Brian Driscoll. Go ahead. Give us your thoughts at this point about the oustering of Brian Kelly.
I'll have a lot to say about Brian Kelly, but just to stick to kind of this as a news aspect, I just did not see a scenario in which LSU was going to fire Brian Kelly after the season. They're 5-2 going into this weekend. They had a competitive loss to Vanderbilt. They had a competitive loss to Ole Miss. And, look, Brian Kelly had a lot of postseason blowouts, and he had a couple early at LSU. But, usually when they'd lose in the regular season, it'd be kind of it'd be somewhat competitive. And, I think the last couple years, I think what hurt him was a lot of the blowouts. And I'm talking about at Notre Dame. A lot of the blowouts a lot of the big game losses the last couple of years were not competitive. I mean, you think back to the Bama game last year at home, and then this year. And I just think the nature in which they lost, and the manner with which he conducted himself on the sidelines during the game, I think just made it to the point where LSU just said, hey, we can't keep doing this. We can't keep going down this road. And that's a proud program, and a program where John Bryce tweeted something out earlier today. Let me see, because I think John sent that to me. Maybe it was somebody else. Let me find. I've gotten so many tweets tonight. Yeah, it was John Bryce tweeted this out. My dude, John Bryce. And he said that the last coach at LSU to not win a national championship was Jerry DiNardo. That was 4 coaches ago. And they had Ed Orgeron, Les Miles, Nick Saban. And, when I look at this one, I just think you got to the point where you spent all the money you spent this offseason to rebuild your roster. You've done everything. They've done everything that Kelly's asked them to do. Need this new thing, need that new thing, need an extra chef, all this different stuff. And LSU did that. And you don't pay that kind of money to get absolutely obliterated by Texas A&M. And the reality is, anyone that watched that game knew that LSU was lucky to be in that game at halftime. I mean, Texas A&M just had so many opportunities to run them off the field. But you're LSU, you're hanging tough. You overcame sort of a bad early start. You settled in. You've got an 18-14 lead going into halftime. And then you just come out of third quarter and you're not even competitive. And you got Brian Kelly. He can read his lips, threatening to fire people during the game. He looked at the special teams analyst, was like, this will cost you your job. He's loses his mind on Garrett Nussmeier. And just, it looked like a broken program. And honestly, I have respect for LSU being willing to say, this can't continue. This isn't fair to our players. This isn't fair to our fans. This isn't fair to a lot of things. And you just announced this week that you're raising ticket prices next year. Good luck selling tickets to that, because there were so many expectations for this team coming into the season. And I mean, Trev, you and I were debating before the year, where should LSU be ranked? And we had a bit of a disagreement. But it was between 8 and 13. That's where our disagreement was. It was never about, oh, will they be ranked or not? And to just fall out of the top 25 before we even get to the end of October just says that something went terribly, terribly wrong. And we were talking with Brian Smith today. The most points. This is I think the most points. The 25 they scored in the loss, I believe, was the most points LSU has scored against an FBS opponent this season in 8 games. That's embarrassing. And the guy that you chased out 2 years ago has got the number 6 offense in the country in scoring, and Mike Denbrock. I think it just was LSU was saying, hey, look, we're not going to keep doing this. We can't. And this isn't LSU football. And kudos to them for having the guts to do what Jack Swarbrick didn't have the foresight to do in 2016.
Yeah, I think that's the craziest thing. I mean, in the preseason, Brian and I talked, and I had them ranked 8th, and he had them ranked 13th. But the conversation was ceiling versus floor. We talked about it at that time. We just didn't, based on the talent of the roster and the makeup of their schedule, at least what it looked like in the preseason. If they hit a certain mark, we could see them falling somewhere in between 8 and 13. Did not expect it to go unranked. I think that's crazy. And definitely a heads-up move, because now, I mean, with the way that the college football landscape is now, you have to start thinking ahead. It's not, all right, let's get to the end of the season and then let's assess, especially with the trend of what this season has been. I mean, Brian, how many questions did we get in the mailbag on Friday about, hey, could this be the craziest offseason we've seen in quite some time with the coaching carousel? This is just more fuel to the fire, man. It's been crazy.
Yeah. Well, Trev, to your point about LSU, you can't afford to just give them one more year. You can fall behind Sean, you can fall behind so quickly in today's era. So quickly. And we're going to hear all these things about, Kelly, that, like somebody in the chat said this, like, Kelly, they, told him they had to fire this guy, and Kelly said, no, he won't. And that's all going to be coming from Brian Kelly in an attempt to save face. That's what he's always done. But to your point, Trev, you can't afford, and Sean, I want to get your thoughts next. You can't afford to just say, well, we'll just go one more year. Give them one more year, because then how many more tens of millions of dollars are you going to waste on portal players and high school recruits for a team that's not going to win? They finally saw what we knew when he was hired, which is this is not a championship coach. So why keep trying to give him one more year? This should have been your one more year after the way they played last year, Sean. It just, in today's landscape, you can fall behind so much quicker than you used to, because A, it's harder to get players, and then B, it's harder to keep a roster. And those players did not look like a bunch of guys that felt like they wanted to play for Brian Kelly that much longer.
No, there were so many signs last night. First of all, that stadium emptying out in the middle of that game was that was crazy. That was because you're so used to Death Valley being this incredible electric atmosphere for a night game, especially against big-time opponents. And it was that early, especially when they took the lead. And then all of a sudden, and you pointed out something in the article you put up on the message board that was just really ironic. Like, his last 2 losses were to 2 of his defensive coordinator hires at Notre Dame. And a guy that early in the season, when asked about a certain thing, I thought he was very diplomatic in the way he shared his disdain for Brian Kelly and Mike Elko. And last night, I think he put his neck and just would not let up. Like, he was like, this is my moment to get you back, and I am not going to call off the dogs at all. And all of that culminated in the powers that be being there, watching that, and pretty much feeling like, okay, this is rock bottom. Like, this is rock bottom. And it coincides with, I think, and I'll be interested in hearing what you guys think. I think there were conversations. I think the powers that be weighed both sides of keeping him and making changes and possibly making that move. And I think the way they went ahead to announce what's happening and you haven't even finalized the buyout makes me feel like they know who they want and they feel like it's a small window to go get this person because other schools are going after the same person. Mm-hmm. We need to forget finalizing that. We need to make a move now if we're going to make the move. So, honestly, I respect the powers that be at LSU because it takes conviction and it takes some inner fortitude to admit when you made the mistake.
Yep.
We screwed up. We screwed this up, LSU fans. We gave you 4 years of nothing and got finessed out of $90 million. We screwed up.
Man.
So, but kudos to them to say, we're getting off of this train.
Yes.
We're getting off this train. We'll bite the bullet and we're going to do what we need to do to get back to, LSU football. So I tip my cap because that definitely somebody had to commit to cutting the check. Somebody had to say, I got it.
When you heard, I think it was Pete Thamel reported this, might have been Ross Dellinger. Those two guys, like to me, they're two of the best in the business when it comes to putting stuff out. They don't just put stuff out, just like they heard from someone who heard from someone, right? Like these are pros when it comes to news. When they started reporting, whoever it was started reporting that the governor was involved, like you're like, okay, it's done. It's a done deal. My dad was like, why does the governor care about football? I said, it's not about football. The governor, as the head of the state, and that being Louisiana State University, has to figure out, hey, are we able to make this work financially? How do we get the money together to handle this? And that's ultimately what this came down to, was he had to get involved to make sure that, hey, this is a big chunk of change for a state that's not rolling in dough. And when you start hearing things like that, you're like, oh, he's done. The only question is, it's a when, not if question at this point in time. And I think when you saw how miserable the players were last night, when you saw the manner in which the coach after coach after coach was berated last night, it's like this is actually what toxicity looks like. This is what a toxic culture actually looks like. You almost kind of owe it to your program to say, no, we can't do that. I absolutely love this response. Beefeater said, IB flag at half staff for BK. So no. So this is happening because I had to take my flag down for the tailgate a couple weeks ago, and I can't get it to stick back up. And my wife's been out of town. She just got back tonight, and she knows how to fix that stuff. But we won't be having this problem tomorrow. But I mean, Trev, at the end of the day, I don't think just losing to A&M is what got him fired. I think it was the entire, that was bad. If you're LSU, that was bad PR for our program last night. Not just the way they lost, but then just and good Lord, why does the person doing the video hate Brian Kelly so much? Because every time something bad happened, they'd shoot right to Brian Kelly berating someone. Mm-hmm. And then who was it? Was it my buddy Jeff texted me this last night? He's like, he said, this is right after something happened. This is at 10 something o'clock. He goes, cross-armed Kelly coming in 3, 2, 1. And then 2 minutes later, it's just Kelly and is defeated. This is what Kelly does when he knows he's lost. And he's like, and he goes, there it is, cross-armed Kelly. I mean, it was yell, scream. And you could just see it in the players' eyes. They played tight. They played like a bunch of players that were afraid to make a mistake, which is exactly what we saw in big games from when he was in Notre Dame. And I think the manner in which he was going off on person after person, it was terrible PR. And then they're cutting to people walking out late third quarter. That was a walking advertisement for your program is broken. What are you going to do about it? And kudos to the LSU leadership for saying that's not going to keep happening in our program. Look, we actually you could say, well, Notre Dame, oh yeah, won a championship in 1989. We've won 3 titles since 2000. This is who we don't put up with that. And kudos for them to do it. And like you said, Sean, Mike Elko absolutely kept pouring it on last night. And kudos to him. Because if you guys knew the things that we know about how that whole thing went down when he left, you'd be like, why wasn't he still throwing in the last drive? So I just love the fact
because Marcel Reed went for over $100 on the ground.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Beautiful.
Well, just watching that whole thing, to your point, Brian, just watching that whole situation yesterday kind of play out. I was on my way home, from my son's game, and I'm watching this game, and I'm texting Brian. We're going back and forth, and I pulled up the game on my phone, and I'm watching it, and just watching him just like mean mug his coordinators, just standing there on the sideline, just staring down his special teams coordinator, and then yelling at the offensive coordinator about his play. I mean, it was an absolute dumpster fire, all on national television for everybody to see. And, LSU prides itself on the fact that they don't lose at night, at home. Like, that's just not what they do. And they get all the night games in the SEC. And, you hear Lane Kiffin complaining about it, and all these different things. They didn't just lose last night. And then I realized this is not why he was fired. It was not this one game or this one, situation. But this one game and this one situation just, to me, encapsulated and summarized his entire tenure. It was a out-of-control locomotive that he couldn't stop, with his facial expressions and his arms being folded and yelling at the players, and the players not listening to him. I mean, players were, Nussmeier was like, they were yelling at each other on the sideline. We saw that at Notre Dame, but yelling at and then ignoring him after that as well. Like, it was just a bad look.
Like, we saw that with Tommy Rees and Brian Kelly. We saw that with Tony Pike and Brian Kelly. That just looked different. You could tell that wasn't a player
way different. Yes.
Who was giving it back in a way that your head coach may like. That was one where a kid felt like under attack. And he had, I mean, this is a kid that Brian Kelly's thrown under the bus publicly this season. And that just did not look like it. The one time he was going off on a coach, it was actually valid, is after late in the second quarter when he was yelling at Joe Sloan saying, you can't throw that pass. We don't have any timeouts left. He was actually spot on. I mean, it was, but still, it's just kind of like, now it's just to the point where, Vince, it's when you're doing that, when you're winning, it's like, what a passionate coach. Look at the fire. Look at the drive. That's what he has to do to get this program at Notre Dame that lacks the talent and lacks all this other, to win. You've got to act that way. It's what's needed. And then when you're losing at LSU, it's like, what a scumbag. I mean, that's who he's always been. I mean, This is a guy that attacked David Grimes in the middle of a Saturday night ABC game. You guys remember that? I mean, so this is who he is.
And it's also how, to your point about being passionate on the sidelines and, getting in a player's grill or whatever, or a coach for that matter. Look at how they're receiving that too. Look at how they receive him doing that. Because if Marcus Freeman gets into the grill of somebody, just as an example, we can all name coaches that are fiery on the sidelines that can raise their voice at a player or a coach. Look how they receive it, and you'll understand what that relationship is.
Correct.
Because I've been yelled at by a coach, but I respected the hell out of that coach, and I took the coaching. You know what I mean? Or I took the criticism from my head coach that was yelling at me because I called the wrong play or whatever as a coordinator or as an assistant coach or whatever. If you respect them, you take it differently. The way that it was being taken last night was not from a place of respect. I'm sorry.
Because there's a comment that says the days of Woody Hayes yelling. And I'm like, no, not really, because there's plenty of coaches that still go off on their players. Do you guys remember not that long ago Nick Saban just smacking AJ McCarron on the butt, coming off the sideline? It's like we've said this about Harry Hiestand. I've never met a coach that cussed more than Harry Hiestand.
Right.
But the players loved him. I mean, he would go off on them, but they loved him because there was always teaching involved.
Mm-hmm.
B, for him, cussing was just kind of like just part of the vocabulary. And C, he had proved time and time and time again that he loved those kids as young men. He cared about developing them as young men. He had their back. It's kind of like, what was it last year when Chris Hilton came off the field and Kelly got on him and Chris Hilton said something back and he goes, starts talking about uncoachable and all this other kind of stuff. And when you do those things, you're going to lose the locker room if they don't think you care about them. And
Correct.
that was I can't say that was the issue at LSU. I can't say that because I don't cover that team day to day. I don't have sources that call me. I don't talk to team captains and dads who used to play there and, and current coaches. And I mean, all the people that were my sources before when he was in Notre Dame. It's just, it's rinse and repeat from what I did see at Notre Dame and why the players at Notre Dame did not receive it as well. A lot of them, because it wasn't coming from someone that they felt had their back. And I just think when you get to that point in the program where it's clear the locker room doesn't want to play for this guy anymore, and I don't know that that's true. So let's make sure we're being clear of what's our opinion and what's a fact. That's our opinion.
About the reaction that
we were both coaches, right? Sean, you've been around young people your whole life, whether it's ministry, whether it's coaching, whatever. You and Trev, you are, you're the closest to actually have been a player. You were a player within the last decade. The body language made it very obvious that it wasn't being received in a way that other hard coaching gets received. I've seen Dan Lanning go off on players at Oregon way worse than what Brian Kelly did last night. And yes, sir. Oh, I've seen Mark. I mean, did you guys see Mark? Who was it recently? Mario
Cristobal.
No. When he was Marcus Freeman was going off on somebody earlier this. Might have been. Was it Jason? No, it wasn't. No, somebody got a stupid penalty, and Marcus Freeman lit him up.
Yeah,
Boubacar, wasn't it? Boubacar.
It was Boubacar.
Lit him up, and Boubacar just yes sir, and then went out and kept playing.
Yes, exactly.
But he also knows, hey, this coach loves me. Coach has got my back.
Right.
So if he's coming at me this way, I better listen. And so those are the things that you look at and say, okay, this is what needs to be fixed. So, and kudos to them for doing it. So that's the news. And then we'll talk here a little bit kind of where LSU goes from here. But I just got to say, Vince, that this is also, I think, what happened today is a little bit of validation for, first and foremost, Notre Dame.
100%. I mean, any fan, well, I shouldn't say any fan. The way he left Notre Dame should not surprise a lot of people because it's almost verbatim the way he left Cincinnati. And a lot of Notre Dame fans kind of push that to the side, with the way he left Cincinnati because he came to Notre Dame. And then they were all upset the way that he left Notre Dame. So I find that part kind of funny as well. But guys, this is who he was. And we at Irish Breakdown, Brian specifically, because you actually went on shows and talked to people down
caught a lot of heck for doing it as well.
South of the Mason-Dixon line. Yeah. And caught a lot of crap for it. There's no doubt about that. And we said, look, this is who he is. You're going to see it at some point. You're going to see it. And it took 3.5 years. Well, probably less than that to actually see it. But to really, really have it come home to roost in 3.5 years. So, it's best served cold, I guess, after 3.5 years.
Let me say this first, because I want to get to that. But I want to actually speak to how I think this is validation for Notre Dame first, Sean. Because all these people that when he left for LSU, there was all this talk from the nation. And I'm not even talking about like haters. I'm talking about like legitimate conversation from people who are giving you their honest opinions that Notre Dame was not a place you can win the way you could back in the day. You can't win there. And LSU has the resources, the chefs, all these different things. Brian Kelly said, and I'm going to quote Brian Kelly here because I wrote an article at the time that just I went hard at him at the time. And I brought it up in my He Was Fired article. And he said this. He's talking to Ralph Russo, and he said, it's been awesome because you've got incredible facilities. You've got players that want to be great. I want to be in an environment where I have the resources to win a national championship. And then went on to make comments about all the players and stuff like that. And people bought that hook, line, and sinker. Notre Dame can't compete financially. They won't do this. They won't do that. all while ignoring the immense upgrades that Jack Swarbrick had done since he was hired in 2009 to rebuild the image of Notre Dame. It was Jack that spent the money on that fought to raise the money for the indoor facility. It was Jack that fought for the Crossroads project, which is going to expand the stadium, for the turf, for the scoreboard, for all these different things that have made the recruiting area where, yeah, Kelly said he wanted it. It was Jack that went and fought to make it happen. But there was still this notion that, no, you can't win there. It's easier to win at LSU. LSU has this. LSU has that. And it's so much easier to win there than it is Notre Dame. Is it easier to win at LSU than Notre Dame? Yes, it is. It always has been that way. Does that mean any idiot can take over the LSU job and win there? Clearly not.
Clearly.
But what it says is, okay, hold on. In 4 years, you could never have a season like you put together in 2012 or 2015 or 2018 or 2020, or that Marcus Freeman put together last year, or that he's putting together this year. So I think it's validation for Notre Dame in that Brian Kelly used to talk about Notre Dame like it was the problem, that Notre Dame won in spite of itself because of his greatness. And he spent his whole career at Notre Dame talking down the institution, talking down the tradition, alienating former players, not just players that played for Lou and past, but his own former players. I've seen Manti Te'o back at Notre Dame more under Marcus Freeman than he ever was when Brian Kelly was the head football coach. And you could say that about a lot of guys.
I was going to say, insert Notre Dame former player here, and
yes,
your statement is valid.
And Sean, you and I have talked to a lot of the same alums. They did not like him because he made it very difficult to be around the program. Marcus Freeman has completely changed that during his tenure at Notre Dame. And so this notion that Notre Dame couldn't win because of Notre Dame's limitations, and the only reason they won the way they did is because of his greatness, was always a lie. We said it was a lie, and it's been proven to be a lie because of two things. Clark Lee has won more at freaking Vanderbilt than Brian Kelly has won at LSU, and Marcus Freeman did something. In a week and a half, Marcus Freeman won more big games in a week and a half in January than Brian Kelly won in 12 years at Notre Dame. And so I think this is also validation for Notre Dame. And LSU will get their own validation when the next coach goes out and wins at a level that Brian Kelly couldn't. It was never about Notre Dame. It was always about Brian Kelly. Well, they wouldn't work with him on this. Maybe because he was an a-hole to everybody on campus. Maybe they're willing to do things for Marcus Freeman because he treats them with respect and doesn't make it seem like they owe him and they should worship the ground that he walks on. And they should just do it because of how wonderful he is. That's why they fight for Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame. That's why they didn't fight for Brian Kelly when he was at Notre Dame. It was never a Notre Dame problem during Kelly's tenure. Now, was it a Notre Dame problem during other coaches' tenures? Yes, it was. There were times when the administration at Notre Dame did things to hold the football program back. But you know what? They did that during Lou Holtz's tenure. And you know what he still did? He still freaking won. So I just want to remind people when people say Brian Kelly's the all-time winningest coach at Notre Dame, A, he coached there longer. B, he was the only coach to ever coach his entire career in a 12 regular season tenure, with COVID being the lone exception. And he's 8th all-time in winning percentage among coaches who have coached 5 years or more. I just want to remind people of that when they say he's the winningest coach of all time. That's a longevity award. So first and foremost, I mean, yes, I'm going to have some things to say about what this means for us, but more importantly, this is validation for Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman has shown that was a lie. This is who Notre Dame can be. And Brian Kelly, if Brian Kelly would have embraced Notre Dame the way that Marcus Freeman embraced Notre Dame, the way that Lou Holtz embraced Notre Dame, maybe he could have won more than he did in Notre Dame. Maybe he could have done better than 23 for 24 for his entire career against ranked opponents. Oh, but they were so much better towards the end of his career. Bull. And Brian Kelly's last 3 years at Notre Dame, they went 4-5 against top 25 teams and 1-3 against top 10 teams. They were the same teams they always were. They just played fewer games against ranked opponents. That's the facts. They went 11-2 in his last year at Notre Dame, 11-1 in the regular season. They played 2 ranked teams that year. One they beat, who ended up falling out and losing 5 games. The other one, Cincinnati, beat them by 10 on their own field. So no, he was not. He was marginally better than the coaches who came before him. And the standard was never, can you be better than the last 3 fired coaches? But he always held it to that standard because what Brian Kelly was great at Notre Dame was changing the standard and the expectations. He tried to do that at LSU, and they were like, no, because we haven't gone 30-plus years. We're not so desperate for a title that we're going to let you lie about our program like Notre Dame fans did for a long time, understandably so. But he was always the problem. It was never about Notre Dame. Nobody fought harder for Brian Kelly than Jack Swarbrick because he's the only AD who wouldn't have fired that dude after 2016. And for him to badmouth Jack on his way out behind the scenes says everything you need to know about Brian Kelly. He was always the problem, and Notre Dame got validation by his tenure at LSU. The fact that Marcus Freeman coached circles around that freaking guy the last 3.5 years is validation for Notre Dame. I think that's the most important thing to talk about. We'll talk about what this means for us and all that stuff, but I think it was more important, Sean, to first lead off with that.
I'll just like to say that if you go to social media, because the fan base is one thing, people that cover them, it's an entirely different thing. The players that played for him are showing him empathy tonight. That just shows you the character of Notre Dame young men. Like, still to this day, they know the things that Brian is talking about. They know how the alumni, the former players were treated. And still in this moment, they're saying great things about him. I hope coach rebounds. Man, Penn State should take a swing at him. I think he'll do a great job for Penn State. They're choosing to say these things because to them, that's still their coach. And they appreciate that he gave them an opportunity to come to Notre Dame and do what they did. I think that speaks even more about Notre Dame and what they develop in young men. That despite of all the other noise and other emotions that everyone might be feeling about the situation, in this moment, they're choosing to take the high road. Yeah, I think that's validation. Publicly, yes.
They are.
Publicly, yeah.
Let's just say that. Because, Sean, I know our DMs and our text messages are a different story. Publicly, they're taking the high road.
Yeah, but I still think that they made that choice to do so.
Mm-hmm. Which, to your point, which is why former players that played before his tenure, you and I have asked this question of Lou Holtz players. Why did you guys never say anything?
Mm-hmm.
Like I sat there in the basement of one of their homes and said, "Why didn't you guys ever say anything?" Like, because that only hurts Notre Dame, and I'll never say anything that hurts Notre Dame. If I have beefs, I'll take them to the right people privately, and they would, and it would fall on deaf ears. Because that's the kind of young man that you were getting at Notre Dame, and you wanted to try to pretend like they were the problem. Guys, the 2011 team that went 8-5 had 2 future Hall of Famers on it, and that doesn't include Tyler Eifert or Lewis Nix or Stephon Tuitt or Michael Floyd. Like 2 future Hall of Famers on it, and you went 8-5. You know, like, don't even get me started on the 2014 and 2015 teams. Don't get me started on those. But Notre Dame was never the problem. Brian Kelly was always the problem. So before we begin, fellas, Trev, I'm going to ask you, because we can only get 4 in the show, I'm going to ask you to step out just for a second. We have a special guest that has a word he'd like to say to us. Preston, my guy. What's happening, dude? How
Brian,
are you?
Thank you for having me on, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate you for inviting me. And I just want to say appreciate you for, being a class act for the last 4 years and definitely keeping the receipts and remember everything accordingly. So I'm here to thank you and all the Notre Dame fans who have been outstandingly supportive and correct for the last 4 years. So whatever y'all want, guys, I'm here for y'all.
Well, you are
sure.
now part of a fraternity.
Yes.
Whether you are happy about that or not, I'm
Yeah.
not sure. But welcome to the club, man.
Preston, we're kind of having, as a fan base, that scene from Step Brothers. Did we just become best friends? Yeah. That's kind of
Brian,
the moment we're having right now.
Why didn't you tell me this guy sucks? I just don't understand, man.
I mean, you
really
know what? I
misled me.
should have come on your show and told you that back in 2021. That's my bad. I'll own that. That's my bad. I should have told you. But honestly, Preston, like I said to you in the chat, I understand why people felt that way. Who wants to believe that the guy that you just got hired into the program is that guy? But here's the thing that I think you guys have learned in the last 4 years. There was this thought that the fact that he did that at Notre Dame, wow. When in reality, Notre Dame was always a better job than what Kelly made. Kelly was the one that tamped down the expectation of Notre Dame, just like he did with you guys. And we said earlier in the show where we gave props to LSU for saying, nope, because you guys aren't so desperate for a championship because you haven't won one. Like 1988 is the last time you won one. So we're just happy to be 10-3. No, that's not the standard at LSU, and props to them for doing that. But I get why you guys felt that way at the time. And what I think a lot of you guys didn't understand and the LSU fans didn't understand is a lot of Notre Dame fans have respect for LSU. It's a very, Louisiana is a very Catholic state. So there's always that.
Mhm.
There's been some Notre Dame greats that have come there. Jerry DiNardo's a beloved former Notre Dame All-American coach there. But it was also not Alabama. And so there was a respect for that.
Right.
But there's a lot of LSU or Notre Dame fans that have respect for LSU. And it was more of a, hey guys, we're trying to warn you, not taking shots at LSU or not, oh, we're jealous that Brian Kelly left. We were actually happy Brian Kelly left and just wanted to warn you guys, hey, this is what's coming. And you guys unfortunately got to see
it was probably a bit of blind arrogance to not heed the warning and take it seriously. And, it was probably a bit of, just thinking, okay, well, this is just sour grapes or whatever, and not even looking that, there's the other angle of, maybe how we feel about it and stuff like that. And I understand why. I still understand the logic in my head, and I try to let logic guide me, not emotions. And the logic is that LSU has an elite talent base. And I still, the thing is like, he can't be worse than Ed Ogeron was as a coach. And it's still baffling, but man, I think y'all can agree with me. It's pretty difficult to describe. Brian Kelly does some things well. Yes. And I think it is a difficult thing to describe why he is not an elite football coach. But now it's like, okay, you experience it and you live it for 4 years and you start to understand, oh yeah, no, these are things that he's doing very incorrectly. And it's not just Notre Dame can't get players anymore. It's like the 80s anymore. It's start to realize it's a bit more.
Right. Well, and you look back at Charlie Weiss's tenure and you're reminded that, well, he recruited really well.
Yeah.
And he constantly put top 5 classes together. All of a sudden it changed somehow during the Brian Kelly tenure. And I mean, look, he didn't get here by accident, right? It's not like he was rigging the game to win at Central Michigan win at Grand Valley, then win at Central Michigan, then win at Cincinnati, and then win at Notre Dame. I mean, you can't take away some of the things Brian Kelly did. I thought he got too much credit for. I thought he did a good job at Notre Dame, but they made him out to be like this generational coach simply because he was better than Charlie Weiss and Ty Willingham. That's not the standard.
Coach with a ceiling, is that fair? Ceiling?
Very much so. A self-imposed ceiling, because there comes a point in time, Preston, where a coach has to be willing to say, look. We have to look in the mirror and say, hey, I did something wrong. And I just think about when Nick Saban was at Alabama, and they had a way of doing things. They'd won in 2009, they won in 2011, they won in 2012. But in 2012, or was it 2012, something happened to his team that year. And they had to face this cat named Johnny Manziel. And then it happened to him again the next year. Then Ole Miss did something. And he said, look, this has worked for us in the past, but we can't be this team anymore. The game is changing. We have to evolve. And it requires a look in the mirror type of situation. And the problem with Brian Kelly is when things don't go wrong, he would give you a public, this is on me, but it was never actually, he never felt that way. It was always privately, no, it was this guy's fault. It's this guy's fault. And I just felt there were times where he got a little bit not happy when other people started to get more love than he got for how things went. And he would make some good coaching hires, but then ruin them with other terrible coaching hires. So you had Mike Denbrock for 2 years, and you waste them with Matt House. Then you get rid of Matt House, and then you go to Mike Denbrock and say, hey, just so you know, we're going to promote Joe Sloan to, co-coordinator because we got to do this. And he's like, well, no, I'm not believing that because so here's the thing you got to remember about that, Preston. He tried to do that to Mike Denbrock in 2015, and he said it's just to get him a raise. It's not going to give him any extra duty. You're still the guy. But then in 2016, he took away responsibility for Mike Denbrock and gave it to Mike Sanford, and then the 4-8 season happened. So if you're Mike Denbrock, you're like, nope, I'm not buying that again. There was no need for that. But that's the kind of stuff he would do, Preston, is you got a good thing going, but then I just always got to do this. And it was always geared towards the people that were most loyal to him. And eventually some of them just say, screw that. And it was his way. Even when his way didn't work, he was unwilling to say, maybe my way needs altered and needs to evolve. Nick Saban evolved. Urban Meyer evolved. All great coaches evolve. And the ones that don't get left behind. And his unwillingness to do that and look in the mirror, Preston, is why I think he was never willing to say, hey, maybe what I want to do is the problem. Maybe how I want to go about practice is the problem. Maybe me insulting and tearing my coach as a new one on the practice field in front of the players, undermining his authority in that room, is part of the problem that they don't listen to him anymore, which we would see firsthand. And that's ultimately the thing is he was unwilling to say, in order to win the big one, I have to change. It was easier for him to say, well, how about we just lower the standards and lower the bar to a level that I can much more easily reach to consistently. And then when we get there, I can tell everyone how hard it was to do that. So you should love me and give me more money. That's who he was at Notre Dame. And I didn't think that in the first 3 years of Notre Dame. It took me till 2013, 2014, 2015 to finally realize that, in fairness to you guys. But it just was kind of like, this is who he's always
by
been.
using that logic, I figured it out a lot faster than you did, man.
You did?
Took you till 2020 to figure it out. Took me
No.
years.
I figured it out started to figure it out like 2013, 2014. You know what did it for me, Preston, is so I covered him in 10 and 11. And then in 12 and 13, I got back into coaching. And watching his tenure in 12 and 13 as a fan, where I could look back and be like, huh, and not get the daily spin machine kind of coming at me. You look at it differently. And then when you come back, you start talking to parents, you start talking to coaches, you start talking to different people, and you're like, dude, this is a house of cards. Like here's a perfect example. I was told this by a Notre Dame captain. Sean knows exactly who I'm talking about. There was this is a captain that played for him post 2016. So a guy that was part of the turnaround. And we were talking and this is right when he had finished his career. And he said, I get so tired of hearing about how he turned things around. He goes, do you know that he would welcome us back in January from winter break, and then we wouldn't really see him again until spring practice? It's like Matt Bayless was our head football coach during those 4 months. Like Clark Lee was our head coach during that time. Not Brian Kelly, but Brian Kelly wanted to take all the praise for it. And that really frustrated. And then when things did go wrong, it was Sam Mustipher's fault because he can't snap in a hurricane. Deshaun Kaiser can't throw 30 times in a hurricane, like literally happened. And that's what kind of cost him at Notre Dame. And that's the stuff so like when we're watching the A&M game, you guys are thinking, oh my God, what is going on? We're like, seen that before. Like we knew what was going on. The thing we said, Preston, was the difference is LSU was willing to say, no, we're not going to let that happen again. Where Notre Dame, unfortunately, let that go on way too long.
Yeah, man. I don't know how they're going to pay for it because y'all got to understand LSU doesn't really have the money like Notre Dame has. And by the way, that's another factor that you have to consider. A serious question LSU fans are going to be left with now is, why was Brian Kelly more successful at Notre Dame than LSU? Because frankly, his last 5 years at Notre Dame were better than his tenure at LSU.
They were pretty much the same. And here's what I mean by that. If you guys are just looking at overall record, and I get that. You're looking at overall record. What I would say is he was just as unsuccessful because he couldn't win. He played more ranked teams in the SEC. And that's really what it boils
5 and 10, though. And,
I mean,
pretty brutal.
And I think his 5 and 10, I think it was most of that was against, he went 2 and 6 his last couple of years. That was against mostly top 10 opponents. His record against top 10 opponents in Notre Dame was almost identical. And that was the problem.
Oh.
It was he couldn't hide. So, like, for example, his last year at Notre Dame, they went 11-1. Their only win over a ranked team that year was Wisconsin, who didn't even finish ranked. They played one top 10 team that year, was Cincinnati, and they lost at home by 10. Like, that was kind of his 2019. They played 4 ranked teams: Virginia, who didn't finish ranked, Navy, and then they lost to Georgia and Michigan. Michigan beat them 45-14. That was why he won at Notre Dame. He didn't play because you got to remember, he didn't start winning until what? Stanford started sucking. And he went 5-3 in his tenure against USC. 3 of those wins were over interim coaches. From 2010 to 2021, USC was only ranked, I think, twice, maybe 3 times going into that game. His record isn't as good if they played Pete Carroll's USC or if they played early Jim Harbaugh's Stanford, who they always lost. They lost to him in 10, 11. They lost to him in 13, 15, 16. And it wasn't until 2017 when it started going down that all of a sudden Notre Dame's record is better. So those 8-5s turned into 8-4s turned into 10-2s because Stanford's not any good anymore. And because you don't have Michigan on your schedule anymore, and USC's mediocre. So it really wasn't more successful overall. It just looked better. And that was kind of what we were trying to say back then was it looks better because he can't hide the way he did during his tenure. Because like the Big Ten is kind of doing this thing right now in the league, in this era of big league, where they're kind of they're trying to hide their top dogs. They're giving them easier schedules. SEC's not doing that. They're making their big dogs play other big dogs. And so he can't hide the way he did at Notre Dame. And I think that's really the reason. And that's why, if he would have been at Notre Dame in 2021 with the same team he had at LSU in 2023, they're 11-1, 12-0. Same exact
Let me tell you this. What you're saying, though, is such a good fact to hear for LSU's perspective in this, okay? What do I mean by that? Because if that isn't the answer to your question, right, then therein lies perhaps a bigger problem is that, let's say it wasn't the schedule, like what you're telling me. Could it be the era? Could it be this NIL era? And you have to ask yourself the question. I do think LSU is still an elite job, and all the national perception is still reinforcing that. But I had a serious question if in this NIL era, maybe LSU, I think recruiting base, LSU's got top 5 recruiting base, right? And that's how you got players pre-NIL era. I think LSU might be top 15 or so in money, and maybe that lowers the bar of the program. And that's a thing LSU has to look itself in the mirror now is it as elite as a program? Is it a program that's going to be able to carry an Ed Ogeron to a championship in this era where now you have to pay the money? Is 2019 LSU possible in the NIL era?
Yes, it is. The hard part for LSU these next couple of years is you now have to go to those same people that you need to pay for the rosters to pay for his buyout, most likely.
Sure.
That's just an opinion, not a fact, because I don't know how they're going to get that together. But I think what you're going to find, and this is speaking from Notre Dame experience, Sean will attest to this, Vince can attest to this, if Trevor can attest to this. When the boosters are happy, when the alums are happy, because maybe LSU doesn't have as many CEOs or whatever as Notre Dame does, but they got a lot of former athletes that have made hundreds of millions of dollars that think just like CEOs do, which is, I'm not spending my money on that.
Sure. And that's why I was actually writing a column today about how screwed Brian Kelly was. I think I even put a nugget in there. I messaged you about it's like he was going to have to dig his way out of the Mariana Trench with a toothpick, because in this era, if you don't have faith and support, man, how are you going to bring in athletes? How was he going to win this? And by the way, if he was going to fire Joe Sloan, they were going to give him the death sentence of like, hey man, here is $1 million. Go find Joe Schmo coordinator and go win. And by the way, the big frustrating thing, one of the biggest disappointments of Brian Kelly, I thought he was going to be a tactician. I thought he would be able to call plays and take it over. And let's say you get a stinky coordinator who can't do it. Well, okay, you can at least come in and make that unit average. Okay. We saw in 2023, he assembled one of the greatest offenses in SEC history. By rankings, it was number 3 in SEC history. Jaden Daniels wins the Heisman. Okay. You had 4 first-round draft picks on that team. Most of them Louisiana born and bred, by the way. You didn't have to go far to get those guys in. So kind of in a way, Brian Kelly did catch lightning in the bottle that happens at LSU, but he freaking threw it away with Matt House and this atrocious defensive staff that is historically bad, the worst in school history. And it's like, how does that happen? And by the way, when something's historically bad, people want to say, well, is it the coaching or is it the talent? Brother, it's the worst of all time. They all suck. Everything's bad. So what I take that to mean is, okay, so we know that if it's that bad, yes, the coaching was a problem on that defense. Number one, he's responsible for who he brought in on that defense, because guess what? The guys he fired them and replaced them with were already on staff. Blake Baker was already on staff at LSU. He sent Blake Baker packing, okay, watched Blake Baker be successful, hired a bum, fired the bum, and then paid the guy twice as much money to come back, okay? But on top of that, there's
As
the
offense
concern
goes down the crapper.
Right. And then on top of that, yeah, I'm going to get to that in a second. The concern there was he can't call plays on defense. Now, I know he's been a coordinator for a short time in his career, mostly head coach. He's called plays. Why isn't he taking over and calling plays for that defense? That's why you pay a coach $10 million. He's supposed to, when you have a stinker. So every coach is going to hire a stinker coordinator. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. Okay. But you need to be a grown ass man and go out there and be able to at least call average play calling and get the things up to par. By the way, if you can get just a serviceable defense, say top 50 in the country, you're a serious playoff contender that year. So anyways, we fast forward 2 years, okay, and you do revamp the defensive staff with that guy that you sent packing, and then you paid him twice as much money to run your defense, okay, and the defense looks great. We'll ignore the last 2 games. The defense looks great, okay, and then your offense is just backward. You haven't scored 25 points in a Power 5 game yet.
Your like, most points. I'm sorry, I got to interrupt. Your most points in a Power 5 game was last night in a 23-point loss.
Oh my God. Okay. Anyways, it's embarrassing, but it seems like the signature of the Brian Kelly era in Baton Rouge was 1 step forward, 2 steps back. And that's just such a frustrating thing, because you finally get your defense fixed to a level you need to compete, and your offense is basically the equivalent of your 2023 defense. Why are you fielding a historically awful defense and a historically awful offense within a 3-year window? It's just
familiar, Preston. That's what it is. It's familiar.
Yeah. Hey, Preston,
Sean, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, Preston, I'm very interested, because when you take a look back at this, and I just wonder, in the immediate moment, I'm sure you have thoughts, but can you kind of go, say, to this summer or this winter after the season is over, and you get to take a time to step back, get a big picture look at how things went? Where will you settle as far as this is the moment, not where you knew things were bad, but this is the moment where he lost it, meaning Brian Kelly, where he lost the administration, he lost the locker room. It was the point of no return. And from that point, there was no saving anything.
Yeah. And Sean, I think it's certainly easy to say that's like a spectrum type answer. There was moments of confidence fleeting, right? And probably if you just check my mentions for all the Notre Dame fans coming in, that's where you can kind of see, the confidence starting to fleet. I would say last year in year 3, that was supposed to be a big year, was probably where confidence really began to fade, especially probably down the stretch. I'm trying to think who was the 3rd loss last year. That one was the one that really stung. But anyways, it was after the A&M game. But I'm gonna tell you where it really went down south, and I had to just write a column scorching earth on Brian Kelly, is the Vanderbilt loss, man. I mean, that it was a week ago at Vanderbilt. You're starting to get enough of a tally of the Brian Kelly record where stats are coming up, such as you're 8-11 on the road. And to your credit, Brian, the list of wins you just rattled off. I think I have it written down here. Actually, I'm gonna rip off this list of road wins if I can find it. Check this out. You were 8-11 in the road during regular season. A lot of people got mad at me for excluding bowl games. Guys, I don't give two flying flips
Not
who you
anymore,
beat in a
nowadays.
bowl game anymore, man. Nobody, if the coaches and players don't care to show up, why do I care? I'm not 63-7 Purdue. Congratulations. Hang the banner. 5-7 Auburn, 6-7 Florida, 7-6 Arkansas, 5-7 Mississippi State, 6-7 Arkansas, 3-4 Clemson, which I think is 4-4 now. You got really lucky against South Carolina in a game you should not have won. Quarterback got hurt. You got bailed out by the refs. So that's one good win there. And then 11-2 Missouri. By the way, that team you hung 45 on, you hired their defensive coordinator. That's your one signature win. You don't beat good football teams on the road with Brian Kelly. Once you started to see stats like that just pile up and stack up, that's where you really say, in the way I worded it a week ago, it would have been a Herculean task to rebuild and gain fan. And you need fan faith and support, by the way, because if you don't have, if you don't have NIL funds, you're screwed, man. And how was he going to win over boosters and fans at that point? He would have had to win out.
And that wasn't going to happen. I mean, especially watching last night, the way that they reacted, that wasn't going to happen. I mean, I've been told this by people like that cover the Oklahoma State program. Like, look, there's money that the boosters are waiting to spend on that program, but they're not going to give it to Mike Gundy, someone who's been so anti-NIL and wasn't going to use it wisely. It's like, look, I didn't become this rich because I'm stupid and careless with money. I know a good investment when I see one. And that's my hope for LSU is that's what's going on. And I think what is going to happen, but look, they spent the money this year.
I don't think there's any such organization going on right now. LSU is a program in a lot of disarray right now. Let me tell you, who made the decision to fire Brian Kelly ultimately was the governor of the state of Louisiana. That should give you a lot of signs.
Earlier. We said as soon as you heard that the governor was involved, it was a wrap. I mean, it was
the same guy who brought the obese fake Mike the Tiger on the sideline. Okay, a fake Mike the Tiger, and put it in a glass cage, put a spotlight on it, and said, "All right, now go home, no more Tiger." Like as if that's the same thing as putting Mike the Tiger in a real cage in front of the opponent's locker room. Anyways, that guy is now in total control because there's an interim president. He ran off Will Tate, who was very pro athletics, by the way. And essentially there's like a vote of no confidence in Woodward now, because Woodward, the athletic director, for those of you who aren't too familiar, because he locked up this $53.3 million mess. It's his doing, right? So essentially the governor of Louisiana now gets to build the university and athletics department in his image.
And they need a new AD as well, because let's just remind people that the guy that gave Brian Kelly his contract is the same guy that gave Jimbo Fisher his big contract. I'm just saying, that needs to. I'm just kidding about that. I know LSU is doing some really good things in other sports, but Preston, here's why I came on your show and said to you what I said to you, because what you just described is exactly what we went through at Notre Dame. We sat there and watched a 2015 offense led by Mike Denbrock with a first-round draft pick at left tackle. Let me rephrase. A top 10 draft pick at left tackle, a top 10 draft pick at left guard, a top 10 draft pick at right tackle, a third-round draft pick at running back, a second-round draft pick at quarterback, a first-round draft pick at wide receiver, and then a seventh-round draft pick at tight end get wasted by Brian Van Gorder, who, by the way, had one of the greatest linebackers of this generation on his defense, had a third-round draft pick at corner. His entire D-line, except for one guy, was drafted. The only guy that wasn't drafted, Romeo Okwara, had the best career in the NFL of all those guys and got a huge contract. That's who he had during a stretch where Notre Dame had its worst run defense, a 3-year stretch of run defense in program history. That's according to Lou Emoji, so you know it's true. But this is the whole thing. And then all of a sudden, he brings in Mike Elko and then Clark Lee. Oh, let me rephrase that. Jack Swarbrick brought in Mike Elko and Clark Lee and Chip Long because Brian Kelly was still trying to get out of Notre Dame. And this is from those guys who I talked to and knew those coaches. Jack Swarbrick and Chad Klunder did the majority of the searching for them. And what Brian Kelly didn't come on until late because nobody tried to hire him. A little funny story for you, Trevor. Preston, one of the schools he was trying to get to was LSU. Because remember, that was when they were going after Tom Herman and those guys. Kelly tried to go after that job. They were like, no, you just went
Right,
to
back
8.
then, no.
We're going to hire you.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden they get great on defense, and then the offense goes down, down the toilet. And that was his whole career. He could never put it all together. And a lot of it just had to do with his own arrogance. Like, imagine what this team would have looked like the last 2 years if you still had Mike Denbrock as your offensive coordinator working with Joe Sloan and not, because like that's the thing I was frustrated by when Denbrock came to Notre Dame. You started hearing all this stuff coming out from the football office. Well, Joe Sloan was really the brains of this operation.
Yeah.
Well, clearly not. And that's what Kelly did when Denbrock left after 2016. Well, this was really my offense. Well, then why did it suck after Mike Denbrock left? And why didn't it get good again until Mike Denbrock came back?
Points. By the way, you know why Joe Sloan was getting promoted for the way he was? And it was in large part due to Joe Sloan doing a great job in recruiting, having Bryce Underwood come in. And Bryce Underwood loved Joe Sloan. So, of course, they were trying to secure that as best they could. I think it was rather foolish to run off a proven OC who just had the #1 offense in the country. Or I say run off. It might be a strong
He didn't
word.
run him off. He wanted him to stay.
But not secure him. Right. As comfortably as you should have in favor to basically you gave the security that Mike Denbrock wanted to Joe Sloan to win a recruit who wasn't signed and locked in.
And he'd been there before, Preston. That's the whole point. Like if he hadn't gone through this in 2015 and 2016 with Brian Kelly, maybe he'd have been more like, I get it, coach. You got to give him the co-thing to keep him here to get Bryce Underwood. I'd love to coach Bryce Underwood. Let's do it. But when you're like, you told me that back in 2015 that Mike Sanford was just getting a name, like a promotion by name only, and then you took control away from me on the offense. That ain't happening to me again. And it was smart by Mike Denbrock to make the move he did. But anyway, man, I really appreciate you coming on. I just want you to know that you're going to be surprised how many Notre Dame fans are now rooting for LSU because it was never about LSU. It really wasn't about LSU. It was always about Brian Kelly.
Well,
and the manner in which he left and the shade he threw about, I want to work with players who want to compete for championships and and blaming the facilities and all this other kind of stuff when you're, you walk around Notre Dame now and you're like, dude, these facilities are freaking sweet. That's what pissed a lot of people off because it was the manner in which you departed by blaming Notre Dame and blaming your players. Right. And now I finally get to be at a place that wants to compete for championships. And it was like, dude, you were at that place. But you chose to never do the things you need to do to win. And I think he thought, like a lot of people thought, like, look, dude, if Ed Orgeron and Les Miles can win titles and actually didn't. Yeah, Les won one. Played for the title game in other years, right? Played in 11 for the title. If he can do that, I can do that. That's what I think Brian Kelly thought.
I thought it too, so I was guilty of that.
He was wrong.
Can I tell you the parallel you just mentioned of him just finding something to blame? I think he tried to blame NIL a year ago. Like, okay, well, we don't have NIL funds. And then he realizes that that's all he has because obviously other coaches have won at LSU and that was the only thing that had changed. So you fix that, you invest $20 million in this roster, and now you've got a $20 million team that's 6-6, which by the way is what got Ed Orgeron fired too, but it cost LSU a lot less. I would
at least he gave you a title on his way out.
If I did not come on this show and in front of a bunch of Irish fans tell y'all, I have appreciated y'all for the last 4 years for a lot. Y'all have consistently come after me as any proud fan base should. If I come out here and I say the things arrogantly and as confidently incorrectly as I did, and you are not harassing me, you suck as a fan base. Okay. If the things I said don't fire you up. The minute I say things that I said as an LSU beat reporter and your anger is replaced with apathy, you are cooked as a program. So kudos to y'all, but also doing it in a way that is difficult not to respect. It wasn't a lot of, let's put it like this. They didn't say the mean things about me that they said about you 4 years ago, Brian, right? Yeah. They weren't making
I still have all those
for the
DMs
most
saved.
part. For the most part, I'm getting a few body shames in the DMs, but
Sure,
it's a
sure.
very, very
Everyone has
small
their
minority.
idiots. Yeah.
These Notre Dame fans have conducted themselves in a way that is admirable, and I would be remiss if I didn't thank them for being so passionate and so classy. And frankly, y'all, the way y'all have held y'all selves up over the last 4 years is difficult not to respect, you know. So I just wanted to come out there and make sure I put that out there. Okay.
Well, look, my dad texted me during the show. He goes, "It was very adult for Preston to come on the show." My buddy Spanky, who's in the chat now, said that you and him went at it, I guess, on X, and he said he has massive respect for you now. Coming on here, he will be donating to your show soon.
Oh, stop! You don't have to do all that.
So do appreciate that, man. There's a lot of people that said worse things than you did about me who won't have the stones to come on the show or admit that they were wrong. I can promise you that. But we all know, man. But no, I appreciate that, man. I've had people tell me like the reason they would go and go at you in the show is because you'd actually engage with them, and so I think there was a respect there. But it does take it, and it's hard to do in this era of what we do. It takes some stones to come on a show and admit you were wrong, and it's appreciated. I know this fan base is very. You're probably, if you're looking at the chat, seeing a lot of similar names in this chat that you see on your post game after every LSU loss. So like, hey, I know that guy. I've seen that guy in our chat before, but. I can tell you now, they're going to be coming in your chat now after wins, celebrating, and there's nobody rooting for LSU to run the table for the rest of the way harder than other than LSU fans, than Notre Dame fans. I can promise you that.
This is our step bros moment, like you said.
There we go. There we go. Preston, appreciate you, man. Everybody check out Tiger Bait. I know you guys went live tonight, breaking it all down as well, correct? So I appreciate you coming on, man.
I'll be back tomorrow. We'll be talking about it. So appreciate y'all guys. Y'all have a great night. Thank you for having me.
See you, man. Bye. So Preston reached out and said he was willing to come on the show, and I wanted to get him on because it does take a man to do that. It takes you know what I mean? And he said it to me a couple weeks ago. I was like, look, man, if the season goes the way I think it's going to go, I'll make a public apology. He didn't have to do that. I didn't want him to come on and I wasn't trying to humiliate him, admit you were wrong, bow to me, but I wanted to give him a chance to vent a little bit with people that understand what he went through. We were there. We were you 4 years ago. You know what I mean? So we get it, man. So I really appreciate that. And really appreciate him coming on and saying what he said. So, yeah.
Just listening to him, Brian, talk about the LSU experience. And as you said before, the experience that we had, there's a term that's used by younger people. And I think it applies here. I think in both cases, Brian Kelly was guilty of gaslighting two fan bases and two administrations. And that means people that are narcissistic and have a way of making you feel like it's your fault when it's obviously not your fault. And I think he has found a way at both stops that when things are going wrong, no, it's not, I didn't do anything. And if I did do anything, it's because of what you did. So you're to blame for this. And so someone that's unable as an adult to accept accountability and responsibility for what's going on and what they have been given the authority over, that's a dangerous place for someone to be, especially when they're given the lives of young people into their hands. That's really dangerous. And so I just want to point out some of the off the field things that have happened. We know the history of off the field things at Notre Dame, but the history of the off the field things, just parents talking about the lack of empathy from him with them, sons giving their lives for the program and going through all types of medical challenges. And then for him to, if you want to believe them, to lie publicly about what he had done and how he had reached out and gone to see said player only to be rebuffed and proven to be a liar. That, for me, as much as my heart goes out to young people, that to know there are people out here with that type of integrity being given the reins and the leadership ability over young people to develop them on and off the field, that I don't even know if I want him to have another job just based upon his track record at the last two spots. Like, there's no way I would recommend any young man to go learn how to grow as a football player and a young man under his program. I just would, and that's just strictly from off-field stuff. We've already talked about and documented just his shortcomings, shall I say, just his shortcomings, like as a coach and as a man dealing with the football side. And you start to add the other outside pieces to it. Man, we don't need those types of individuals in college football. No, not with the responsibility of developing young men. Like, excuse my French, money be damned. Money be damned. And so there are some more horror stories. You want to talk about like how young men were treated by him as a head coach as part of the program? That for me is what stands out. Like even the more. Forget the on the field, forget wins, losses, just like the carnage that I'm sure there are some other things that are probably going to be coming out in the days and weeks and months to come outside of the football field. And you compare that to, things that were left behind at Notre Dame. But he's going to get another job. He is. He is. But he would never get a recommendation from me as far as a young man going to learn how to become a man.
No.
I would. No. He wouldn't get
Trev,
it from me.
Yeah, Trev, you kind of got sidelined there for a little bit, and then I was ranting for a long time. I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on this because when this whole thing went down, we were all doing shows together, and you weren't, and so just wanted to give you a chance to kind of share your thoughts on just one the decision by LSU, and then just also kind of your thoughts on what it means for Notre Dame or whatever the case may be, and then we'll kind of get to our final topics after that.
Yeah, I mean, for LSU, it's unfortunately for them, the saying goes, hindsight's always 20/20. And you can have as many warnings as you want, but I think you guys put it best. And you said that you always want to believe that whoever your program entrusts to lead it is going to do a good job. But unfortunately, they got finessed. That's who Brian Kelly is. He speaks well and he's a finesser. It's not a coincidence that since Cincinnati, his winning percentage has gone down when the level of competition has gone up. It's not a competition. Before I was on shows with you guys, I was saying that Brian Kelly's not a championship caliber head coach. Like I saw everything that I needed to see from 14, 15, and 16. That is when I made they'll be good every year. Like I was also willing to admit that 16 was the anomaly. So I also thought he should have been gone at a place like Notre Dame. I mean, the only other coach that really in my lifetime that I saw get a pass after having a season that bad was Charlie Weiss. And that was a year removed from losing Quinn and Samardzija and McKnight and all those guys. So it's like, to some degree, you understand it. You rebuild, you're young. But, I thought Brian Kelly was always going to be fine. 10 wins, 9, 10, 11 wins. You'd have the occasional, oh, wow, you go undefeated. But it was never driven by him. The bus was never driven by him. He was just always a coach that would want praise for buying the bus. That's who he is. He never drove it. And I knew that as a 19-year-old watching this football team before I ever had a platform to speak upon it. I'm a firm believer, and some people may agree, some people may disagree. There are levels to everything, and there's also levels to coaching. And I don't think that every single head coach in college football is a championship caliber head coach. That's why Brian Kelly was able to do great things at Cincinnati, because in my opinion, the expectation, especially back in 2009, was if you're the head coach at Cincinnati, it wasn't, we have to go beat Alabama in the national championship. That's the standard at Notre Dame. It's a Stanford at LSU. But why did he thrive at a place like Cincinnati? Because the standard was do as good as you can. And when it's above that, everything gets inflated. And that's how I felt about Brian Kelly. And Brian, you said something earlier in the show that I couldn't agree with more. I'm not going to say that I'm Nostradamus. Well, definitely not Nostradamus in 2010 when he was around because I was, 13. But I didn't have those thoughts because 2012 was awesome. Like, you guys got to keep in mind, like, frame of reference for my lifetime. Brian Kelly coached Notre Dame for the majority of my fandom with the team.
I loved the hire. I mean,
Yeah.
it was the right hire at the time, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But unfortunately, the writing was on the wall. Vince, you brought it up earlier about the way that, he left Cincinnati and then that came to be in South Bend all those years later. But I'm not surprised that things didn't work out for him. And this is coming from somebody that predicted LSU to be in, they were my number 8, seed in my preseason ranking. Because I was like, every once in a while, what we saw at Notre Dame is Brian Kelly would just have a season where just things kind of come together, whether it was him or a coordinator or just a band of players saying, you know what, screw this. We're just going to kind of be a player-led team and put it on their shoulders. And we saw that in 17. We saw that in 18 to a degree. We saw it in 21, get things turned around. And then obviously that led to a new head coach. So, am I shocked at what happened? No, I am very happy for LSU fans that they don't have to go through it for 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
And in that aspect, I'm envious because also as a Notre Dame fan, it makes you think of like the what if, if Notre Dame had as short of a leash with Brian Kelly that LSU did, what would have 2015 looked like? What would have 17 looked like? What would have 18 looked like? And we can always sit here and play the what if game, but no, I said it earlier this week. I think that there's levels to coaching. I don't think Brian Kelly's a championship caliber head coach. That's why every single level he moved up to, he performed less. And when I mean level, I don't think that LSU is on a higher level than Notre Dame. But the week over week level of competition is more difficult. You can go back and look at the schedules for those. And then what did Brian Kelly do? He did worse. So that's his fit is somewhere middle tier, Big 12, MAC, Conference USA, to where the expectations are so low that when he does better than that, it's like, you're amazing. That's what he wants.
I think he's a good Power 4 coach at a place that doesn't have aspirations for winning a championship. Like I think he's better. Like like Mac and all that. Like I think Brian Kelly can coach at a Michigan State.
Yep.
And be good coaching Michigan State.
Yeah. Wisconsin will probably have an opening. He could go there.
Yeah,
I could see that being a nice way to ride thing. I mean, yeah, I could see that for sure.
Maryland fires their coach. I think those, because then, you win 8-9 games, right? Somewhat regularly. You have the occasional 10-win, really good season, and everybody's happy. That's his level.
And they're happy with the top, 50 recruiting class and, all of those, to your point, all of those things, not at an LSU or a Notre Dame where they want top 5, top 10 recruiting classes year in and year out.
Yeah.
And the stories of him, checking out in the offseason and all that. You can do that at some of those other places.
But he didn't do that at Cincinnati. That's the difference. He lost that once he got to Notre Dame, I think, and had some success. He lost that same fire that got him here.
Yeah. Agreed.
You can't win at the Division II level. Vince, look, your son plays
exactly. I was just going to say that.
In that area. He's not in the same league, but he's in the same state, and they're not in the same league as
they used to be. They used to be,
right?
Yeah.
And so you can't just go through the motions and not recruit and build what should have been 3 straight national champions. If Kurt Ames doesn't get hurt the first year, and I think he got hurt in the first round or it was the last game of the regular season, they probably win it that year as well. That might have been the best of the 3 championship team, three teams in that stretch, but he got hurt. They had David Kirk as a receiver. Like, they might have won 3 in a row. You don't do that by not working. You don't win at Cincinnati by not working. And then brought in players that then Butch Jones was able to go win with for a few years after he left. I just think he kind of got a little bit. He was always an arrogant guy, but he got a little too big for his britches when he had some success at Notre Dame. And look, I'm not going to sit there and act like I knew Brian Kelly was the wrong hire when they hired him. I didn't believe that. I thought that was a great hire when they made it.
It was a good hire, especially considering who was available, what was out there.
Right.
I agree.
Right.
I think it was a good hire as well.
Year 3, he takes him to the title game, and you're thinking, here we go. And then immediately he's interviewing for the Eagles job.
Yep.
And it was always Brian Kelly looking for the escape.
He was trying to parlay
he
it
just
to something
couldn't get
else.
it.
Yeah.
He never bought into Notre Dame, and that's partly why I think he made the excuses he did. Sean, you and I know this. He tried to get out after 12. I was told he tried to get out after 15. He tried to get out after 16. I was told he tried to get out after 18. And then obviously he did what he did in 21 to try to get out. And Jack Swarbrick finally said, okay, I don't want to be here anymore, leave. And the reason he did that is because he knew he had someone finally on staff that he could turn the keys over to. So that was the thing for me, guys, is that was the first time that I was like, this isn't something that you expect. Like right before the title game, this is the NFL. They don't need to make that hire before the title game. Like you couldn't say, hey man, we're trying to play for a national championship here in like what, mid-January? You can't wait for that. That was when I was like, okay. And then, the things I started to hear 2015 about how the strength program was in shambles. Just some of the ways in which certain coaches weren't held accountable, and just some of the different things that he allowed to go on off the field during his tenure was like, this isn't Notre Dame. And then of course you get to the point where he starts then talking down the program and, not wanting to put into work. I mean, and then he would just flat out gaslight us. Sean, you'd use this term. So for a perfect example, when Harry Hiestand left in 2017, Brian Kelly promotes Jeff Quinn. Sweet man. Love Jeff Quinn as a human being, not an offensive line coach in Notre Dame. And then gets up there and tells us, well, this is the guys the captains wanted. He didn't need to say that. He could have said, look, I've had a long track record with Jeff Quinn. He's been in our program for years. He and I did some things at Cincinnati that were phenomenal, and I know that he's a great leader of young men. He could have just said that. He didn't need to say the other thing, which was just blatantly, like, just flat out a lie. And that's not me hearing from – that's just talking to firsthand sources who either, who knew what the captains felt. It was a lie. He was the fourth choice of who they wanted. The national search that he did that led to him promoting Tommy Rees to offensive coordinator. You did a national search and thought that Tommy Rees was a better option than Todd Monken and Joe Moorhead? And look, you guys know I'm a lot higher on Tommy Rees than most people, but I felt Tommy serving for a couple years under a Joe Moorhead or a Todd Monken, those guys were not going to stay here very long. You knew that. That was going to give Tommy the grooming time he needed to take over and be ready to really thrive. Because I do think very highly of Tommy Rees's mind. But the gaslighting of we did a national search from your hotel room in Florida.
Right.
True story.
Feed. Yeah, exactly.
True story. Wouldn't even come back to Notre Dame to interview guys. It was an absolute just constant gaslighting. And could you imagine if Notre Dame could have had Todd Monken as their OC for a couple years while grooming Tommy Rees to replace him? Could you imagine what kind of coach Tommy would have been if he had that kind of influence on him for a couple years? That was the thing that bothered me, guys, is like, Brian Van Gorder and the defenses he made of Brian Van Gorder. This is just your arrogance of not wanting to admit you made a mistake.
Right.
That's all that was. And so it just it was so frustrating to just, and as someone who had sources that, kind of was very close to these things, it's like you just hear the lies and you're just like, dude, this isn't even remotely true. This isn't just like partially true. This is just a flat out 100% lie. All because you wanted to do it lazy. Go ahead, Sean.
What is he? And I'm not trying to be funny, right? Or a bit disrespectful. What is he known for? Like, what is he known for? Like, you can say what you want to say about Lane Kiffin, but for darn sure, if a young man that wants to be a quarterback goes to Ole Miss, they're going to go there and get better. They're going to get better as a quarterback.
Thing, Sean, when he came to Notre Dame, he was known as a great offensive mind, and he was. I mean, I used to study Brian Kelly's film at Grand Valley when he went, because he was at Grand Valley winning titles when I first got into coaching. And then they had great offenses at Cincinnati. He never ran that offense at Notre Dame. So, like, coming to Notre Dame, he was known as a great offensive mind. He was never that at Notre Dame.
Okay, so
That's the frustrating
who was that really him and his offense at the two previous spots?
It
See
was.
that
It was.
okay,
Yeah.
see that becomes really tricky for me. It's like,
It's easier
why
to do
did
that at a place like Cincinnati or Grand Valley than it is Notre Dame, because you're just a ball coach at those places. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to do all the other stuff at a place like Cincinnati and Grand Valley that you do at Notre Dame. Like that I will say, but also here's the other thing too, Sean. Lane Kiffin is going to be himself no matter where he's at. Working for Nick Saban, I'm going to be me. Where Brian Kelly was it's almost like he was afraid to kind of be that, let's let it all hang out, because the pressure of it not working at Cincinnati or Grand Valley is not the same as a not, which goes back to why he's not qualified or why he's not a championship caliber coach. Because when the pressure got real hot, and this is to Trev's point, when the pressure got real hot, he wasn't willing to say, I'm going to let it all hang out. And I'm going to go down swinging. This is what got me here. I'm going to go down swinging. And then, like, that was the issue. I mean, and I talked to people that coached under him at those places, and they would tell you he was very involved in the office. Now, the other coaches would put game plans together and stuff like that, but he was part of that. It wasn't that way at Notre Dame. He got hired at Notre Dame and gave control of the offense to Charlie freaking Molnar. And you wonder why they went 8-5 with Michael Floyd and Tyler Eifert and Zach Martin and Chris Watt and Dane Chris and Jonas Gray and Sear Wood and Theo Riddick and TJ Jones and, you know what I mean? Trevor Robinson, Taylor Dever, the late Taylor Dever, Braxton Cave. And that offense was mediocre at best. Why? Because of him and the people he put in charge. So, like, what they're going through at LSU right now, we've lived that. Because he wants to have people, because, like, Vince, you and I saw this, he would sit there and embarrass Jeff Quinn on the practice field. Just rip him in front of the players. You think he ever tried that with Harry Heastan?
No.
Heck to the no. Harry Heastan would have bottled him up and thrown him in a locker if he tried to embarrass him like that on a practice field. I had a coach tell me one time Brian Kelly walked into an O-line meeting and Harry kicked him out. Told him to leave. So, yeah, he's going to go hire, instead of, here are the other candidates, Justin Fry, who was the O-line coach? Wasn't he the O-line coach for Ohio State last year? Or was that 2 years ago?
I think it was last year, right? Justin Fry, yeah.
Yeah. Joe Gilbert, who was the O-line coach when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won the Super Bowl, and Bob Bostad, who's currently the O-line coach at Indiana. Those are the other three candidates, along with Jeff Quinn, who had been an analyst for like 4 years at Notre Dame. But yeah, he went with the best guy.
That's absolutely.
He went with the guy he could bully.
That's still baffling to me. I don't understand it. So you, instead of being who you were, went down a path of just career gaslighting. I'm just going to gaslight my way through this situation because I worked my tail off to get to this point, and now being who I am it's not worth it anymore. It's the craziest thing in the world because we predicted. You see Garrett Nussmeier, and it's like, yeah, we knew regression was coming. We knew it was coming, right? Heck, if Jay Daniels had stayed another year, it's like maybe regression would have come for him as well. But there was no denying the inevitability of what we are witnessing and what has manifested itself on today and what we saw in the form of that embarrassment at home against Texas A&M last night. No one was shocked. No one that really knew was shocked. No one. And it was just a matter of time of figuring out whether or not LSU was going to have the cojones to pull the trigger. And they did. Mm-hmm. So for me, Trev made some great points. And it's good, man, to hear Trev's perspective to say, like, yo, I'm 19 and I'm not covering the team, but I can see the Fugazi. I can see, I see the Fugazi. Like, what are you talking about? This is a 19-year-old being able to say, oh, man, that's fake. That's cap. Like, no, I'm not buying it at all. That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. My question is, does this, because we've answered the question of how this validates Notre Dame, does this further stain his Notre Dame time? Like, does it kind of double down on what people, because remember, a lot of people protected him on the
Still
way
are.
out.
Yes.
And we're literally trying to, I want to make sure I'm careful with my words. They were protecting Brian Kelly in his departure, defending him as they were resistant to what had happened at Notre Dame and who had taken over at Notre Dame. That's how it was. Like, we're defending him. He's the best head coach in Notre Dame history, or the most winningest coach in Notre Dame history. He resurrected the program, did this, did that. I don't know about this. We gave up that for this. And now we sit here today, and it's like, so what are we saying now? Because what you were defending has now been proven again in a different location. So you can't blame the lack of resources, and Notre Dame didn't want to do this, and you can't recruit at Notre Dame like you can in the SEC or LSU. All of that goes by the wayside. Explain why it happened in another location the exact same way. Explain it. Explain it, because you were defending it on his departure. Explain it now.
There still are people defending him now. You can see it on Twitter. You know, not so much on our board, because I think Notre Dame IB fans, like the true IB fans, are more knowledgeable of this. They've seen past the lies. But like, you get this notion of like, look, he took over a terrible program and completely turned it around and did this and did that, and they're still buying into the propaganda. And my whole thing is, was he better than Charlie Weiss and Ty Willingham and Bob Davie? Yeah, but that's so what? That's like the bare minimum of what you're supposed to do is better than them. Here's some numbers for you. In the 12 years of Brian Kelly's tenure, he won 2 games against he won 4 games against top 10 teams. He won 2 of them in top 2012, didn't win another one till 2018, and then won another one in 2020. So 4 wins over top 10 teams that were ranked in the top 10 at the time they played. I think the number goes up by like 1, because like, you know, you some of the top 10 teams you beat didn't finish top 10. In 2013, you beat a Michigan State team that was unranked, but they finished 13-1. The number's bad. There's also some more losses to teams that weren't ranked in the top 10 when you played. But I like the in this context, I like the top 10 stat at the time you played, because that's when the pressure's on. The pressure of it being a top 10 team going in. Kelly won 4 games in 12 years. In the 12 years prior to his arrival, so that's from 98 to 2009, which is Bob Davie, Ty Willingham, and Charlie Weiss, Notre Dame won 5 games against top 10 teams. Charlie Weiss won 3 games against top 10 teams in 2 years at Notre Dame. Ty won 3. No, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Charlie won 1. Ty Willingham in 3 years, 2 in like less than 3 years, because he got fired before the bowl game, won 3 games against top 10 teams. Brian Kelly won 4 in 12 years. So you were 1 game better than Ty Willingham in the games that matter at Notre Dame. And you had 4 times as much time to do it. Think about that. Yes, he had a better record versus top 25 teams. He was 23-24. The previous 12 years, they were 15-31. Number one, I think that speaks to the schedule issues. And if you look at the 12 years under Brian Kelly, there were a lot of Utahs and South in Temples and Navies in the top 25. Where if you look at the Kelly, Charlie, Ty era, it was a bunch of Texas A&Ms and Nebraskas and Michigan State, Purdue. But again, in 12 years, you had a sub 500 record. Well, early years, no, bullcrap. In his first 3 years, Notre Dame was 6-4 against top 25 teams. 6-4 in his first 3 years. His last 3 years, 4-5. You were worse in your last 3 years against top 25 teams than you were in your first 3 years. So this notion that he turned the program, Jack Swarbrick had a bigger role in that than Brian Kelly. But what about he brought in Mike Elko and Clark Lee? I've said it before, and I'll say it again to the people that don't know this. Brian Kelly was trying to get out of Notre Dame in 2016. I have been told this by so many people that have that were part of this conversation on this side and the side of the schools that his agent was calling. He wanted out in 2016, but you're not going to get out when you're at 4-8. I've talked to people that were part of the process to bring in Chip Long and bring in Mike Elko. And Brian Kelly did not get involved in that process till the end of the search because he was trying to get out. Jack Swarbrick and Chad Klunder led the pushes to hire those two coaches. And then Kelly got on when he knew he had to stay. So this notion that he turned it around. What about Matt Balis? Okay, Brian Kelly was going to hire the strength coach from an assistant strength coach from USC, who, if we can remember at the time, was not a real physical football team. Bob Diaco gets fired at UConn. He calls Brian Kelly and says, hey, just got fired. You got to take a look at my strength guy, Matt Balis. If it wasn't for, now you say, well, he had a job. Well, the job he had was at UConn. You couldn't have taken him from UConn? You know what I mean? So and Mike Elko brought in Clark Lee. Second of all, now I give Kelly credit. He promoted Clark Lee. That was a smart move. He did go out and bring in Marcus Freeman. That was a smart move. So not everything he did was wrong. But I think Brian Kelly gets too much credit because he basically ran a propaganda situation for 12 years. And there was too many people that bought it because he lowered the bar so much that said, look how bad it was before I got here. And look what we did. Congrats. You had a sub 500 record against top 10 teams. Like in 12 years, Brian Kelly won 4 games against top 10 opponents. Let me remind you guys of something. That's as many top 10 wins as Lou Holtz had in 1988 alone. And you know how many wins he had in 1989? Beat number 2 Michigan, beat number 9 USC, beat number 7 Pitt by 38, beat number 1 Colorado. In 2 years, Lou Holtz had twice as many top 10 wins as Brian Kelly had in 12 years. And you want to call this man the winningest coach of all time because he stayed longer in an era where they played more games? But that was the hype machine that Brian Kelly ran. That was the political propaganda that far too many people bought into, including me for a time. So was he a good coach at Notre Dame? Yes. No one can deny he was a good football coach at Notre Dame. But it was his talking down the program, Sean. This is kind of where you're coming from. It was him talking down the program that made what he did look so much better. When in reality, it was a good job, but it wasn't what people made. And Trevor and I have talked about this. Vince, you and I went off on this at the time. I'm listening to 2021. We're watching the Wisconsin game. And I told Vince about this later because you were at the game. I wasn't. Vince, you were covering the game. And I remember calling you and just going off because I'm listening to Joel Klatt talk about how he's talked to Brian Kelly, how this is not one of his more talented teams and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, seriously? Seriously? And it was all because why? He was trying to get Jack Swarbrick to give him more money. And Jack Swarbrick was like, no. So then Brian Kelly went on this PR offensive to talk down his players to make himself look better. And fortunately, Jack Swarbrick had enough and said, you want to leave? Leave. And that's who Brian Kelly was. That's who I know who
the crazy thing is, remember we got the information about the whole stepping out of a recruiting visit with Tobias Merriweather to actually field a call from LSU and his agent. It's like, dude, it's crazy. Man, look, just the lack of integrity, man. That's the only word I could just use, right? The lack of integrity in so many examples. Like you cannot continue to sow that type of seed in your life and then wonder why you reap the harvest that you reap. And it's a reason why Notre Dame went the way it went. It's a reason why LSU went the way it went. And hopefully he recognizes and has a come to Jesus moment and says, you know what? I have to change. I have to change the way I act. I have to change the way I treat people. I have to change the way I treat the people that work around me. I have to change the way I interact with administration. I have to change the way I look at these programs and not trying to puppeteer them and to use them to get what I want, what I need. I need to go back to being the teacher, the educator, and the man that got me into this position when I was at Grand Valley State in Cincinnati. That's it. Hopefully he can have that type of Damascus Road experience that turns him all the way around and allows him to do a 180. Because if he continues down this road, and he would have to be an outright fool to not recognize, okay, something drastic really has to happen.
You know what, Sean? He
with
won't.
my operation.
He won't.
I'm not going to say that. I'm going to hold out hope. I'm going to hold out hope like I would for anybody else that he can right the ship. But man, this is I'm actually starting to build up a little empathy for the guy, man. Just
nope. No.
I know
you
not.
didn't hear the comments that his kids gave me. His supporters, you know what I mean? So screw all that. Screw all that. Screw all that. I had to block both of his sons from our freaking channel. So screw that. No.
And I'll be waiting. If people are still trying to
I'm sorry, I gotta say this. Fellas, this is why Sean's a pastor on Sundays and I dropped out of seminary. This right here, this is the facts. This is why you're a pastor and I dropped out of seminary after 2 years. So I'm just saying, I think this summarizes
you know what?
all of
I won't run from that. It always comes to the forefront. And I'll walk in that every minute of the day at the end of the day. But no, in all seriousness, man, you don't want people to lose their job, you know. But he's not hurting. He's not hurting.
He's walking away with $54 million.
So but at the same time, I just think because I do think this is why I asked the question, what happened and what transpired between Cincinnati and Notre Dame and LSU? Because it's like it's not adding up. Like something's wrong. Like
it goes back to what I said earlier, Sean. Again, my opinion, I think he just reached his ceiling as a coach, but the playing field that he was on changed. And that's why the results feel the way that it was.
So Eve Trev, let's say I'm sure you've played a team with considerably more talent when you were in high school, right?
Yeah.
Your coach didn't all of a sudden change the offense that you were going to run for that game. It's like, hey, this is our offense. We might add a few trick plays here or there, but we're going to focus on trying to be better at what we do to give ourselves the best chance we have to win this game, right? So, if the competition stepped up, I'm going to believe in what I do even more. I believe what I do can work. Because it's not about the competition. It's about what I teach and me believing in what I do. And so when you easily depart from that and then go the route that he's gone, to me, that's really because now I start to doubt whether or not he's really a true competitor. I don't really think you're a competitor, which goes to your point, Trev, because true competitors love that. They love to level up. Like, oh man, you don't think I can do it on the next level?
I thought he was that way too until he took the LSU job. The same year that Lincoln Riley ran away from the LSU job and ran to the Pac-12, Brian Kelly took that job. I think Brian Kelly's a competitor. I just think Brian Kelly's a narcissist who's unwilling to look in the mirror and say, "This is my fault." And it's easier to blame other people. Like, I just feel like if he wasn't a competitor, would he have taken that job? Like, or am I misreading your point, Sean? Because I could be misreading
I'm not
your
talking.
point.
It's not the job. I'm looking at the man. A competitor
Sure.
is a
Oh, yes.
competitor no matter where he goes. I don't care where you go. I'm looking at the evidence. And it's like, if you're still doing the same thing that you did at Notre Dame, which is trying to soften expectations, trying to soften the schedule, dude, that's not a competitor. That's not a competitor.
Yeah.
That's not evidence of a competitor, of someone that wants to go out and beat the best.
I get that.
That's not evidence. So you couldn't do that at LSU, even though you tried to find a way to do it. You had no control over the schedule. Like you had no influence over the schedule at LSU. Left up to the SEC.
Right.
So
couldn't hide from
now
it. Right.
you
But
couldn't
he knew
hide
that
from
going
it.
in. Right.
Yeah. But that kind of further exposed that you really don't. It seems like you really don't want to compete, man. Like what's going on?
I feel like let me run this by you, Sean. I feel like that kid that's like the bully of that like real small block that it's like it's all like he's that bully. He's the toughest guy on his block because he's 13 and everybody else in his block is 7 or younger. And he thinks he's bad and he thinks he's the man and he's beating up all these kids and taking lunch money. And then he's like, I'm gonna go over to this other neighborhood. And then he gets over there and it's like it's a bunch of other kids his age or older. And then he gets punching him out a couple times. Like, screw this. I kind of feel like that's Brian Kelly. Like, he's a like in his heart, in his mind, he's a competitor. Because I've coached, what's he up to now? 35 years. He always tells us. I should have been paying more attention. He always tells us how many years he's been a coach. Like he was a competitor. That's why he took the Notre Dame job. That's why he took the LSU job. But I don't think he is like really understood either job, the culture of either job. And when it didn't work, it was never, oh, it's my fault. It was always, well, these places suck. They're not what I thought they were. They're not willing to do what it takes to win. Even though he was willing to take on the fight, he didn't. Then all of a sudden, when blows start kind of coming, he's like, well, hold on a second. I know I was signing up for this. Which makes him a bit of a walking contradiction in some ways, Sean. Because I'm like, you just don't go to Notre Dame and LSU if you're not competitive. But then it's like the person that wants to. I want to be this. All right, man. If you want to be that, you got to do A, B, C, D, E, and F, and it's going to take this, and this, and you got to sacrifice this. Well, hold on a second. I ain't saying I want to do all that. You know what I mean? Like, I just like Dylan. You could have gone. I mean, Vince, you could have gone through this with Dylan, right? Like, Dad, I want to play college football. Cool, son. Well, you got to do this. You got to get up this time. You got to. Well, I didn't say all that. I said I want to go college football. I didn't say I want to put all the work to get there. Well, guess what your kid would be doing right now? He'd be going to community college, probably still living in the basement. And I mean, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he wouldn't be a starting kicker as a true freshman, but he put in the work. You and I know the work he put in.
Right.
And that's what I feel like Brian Kelly is. Like, he wanted these things. He just, at this age of his career, he wasn't willing to put in the work.
Because to your point, he did put in the work at his first, 3 stops. No doubt about it.
Here. Right.
At Grand Valley,
which is why so many
Central,
guys that worked with
Cincinnati,
him at those places came with him to Notre Dame.
Yes, it's exactly right. It's exactly right. Yep.
Yeah.
So real quick, go ahead, Sean.
No. I think ultimately, you kind of brought things to a point of understanding for me as far as, okay.
We've kind of met.
Yeah, because no, it really wasn't about, I couldn't get it. It just seemed out of whack to me. It just seemed really strange. And then Trev, said what he said, and that shed a little bit more light. And now with you saying that, it's like, okay, because you can get to a point where, like you said, and I think you explained it perfectly, you could really want something and desire something. And then when you are actually hit with the work or the full weight of what it really entails, either you're going to go full bore into it or you're going to retreat. There's only one or two ways you can go.
You mean like Marcus Freeman did at Notre Dame?
Yeah.
He won the challenge of being the head coach of Notre Dame. Got punched in the mouth quite a bit that year one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could have been like, blame this guy, blame that guy, blame this guy. But he said, no. What do I need to do different?
Yeah.
We saw a very different, you know what I mean? And every time he gets punched in the mouth and gets bloodied, what does he do? He comes right back. You know what I mean? He learns from the mistakes. He says, what do I got to do as a head coach to be better? And then we've seen Marcus Freeman evolve in a very short period of time. Is he perfect? No. Is there still room for growth? Of course, because he's only been coaching 4 years and as opposed to 30, whatever Brian Kelly always tells us he's on, right? Like, that's the difference. Marcus Freeman in 2022 would have never allowed Mike Denbrock to run the offense that he's run this year. Never. Because he had a – go ahead, Sean.
The one thing that's different that you just pointed out, Marcus Freeman is going to be him. If he goes down, he's going to be Marcus Freeman. He's going to do it his way.
Yes.
He's going to walk in what he believes in.
This is the thing that frustrates me. That doesn't mean that what he believed in year one, he's going to stick with for 20 years. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to be me. I have a core set of principles that might look differently offensively than what it looked like at the beginning. It might look like a different defensive. Remember, this is a guy that brought in the 3-3-5 and thought it was a good idea to have Isaiah Foskey playing off-ball linebacker in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't asked Boubacar to do that. Evolution. But that doesn't take away from the principles of who he is, which is we're going to be fast, we're going to be physical, we're going to be disciplined, and it may look differently schematically, but we're still what I believe in. And yes, they're throwing the ball around a lot more, but you know what they still do? He still demands physicality in the trenches, right? Like, so the principles haven't changed, even though the evolution of the schematics of the way they practice, of the coaching hires that he's made, where he's quickly learned this is probably not a great hire and moved on from it. Like, that's the kind of stuff that he'll never do. You'll see Marcus Freeman get on. You ever see Marcus Freeman go at a coach? You know what he always does when he goes at a coach? He goes like this and he puts his hands over his head and he goes at him. Or he'll talk to him through the thing where he's not looking at the coach. So you don't know who he's going off on because he's not trying to show up as coaches. He thinks about that stuff. This is not the case here. Guys, let's wrap up. We could go on for 5 more hours. I will say this. I do selfishly take a little bit of satisfaction from the not that he was fired, because I'm not that morbid. My wife actually is probably the most happy person in this household. Like, Sean, we were on the phone earlier and you heard her. So I woke her up from a nap and I was like, hey, about to make dinner. You still want dinner? Because she's been gone the last few days and she's been getting up every morning where she was in the lake, like watching the sunset and all that. And so I get her home and she takes a little nap and I'm getting ready to make dinner. I was like, well, let me just make sure she still wants to have dinner. Wake her up like, hey, babe, I'm getting ready to make you dinner. Do you still want it? She's like, yes, I would. And I said, hey, by the way, Brian Kelly got fired. She was like half asleep. She goes, good. I said, God, dog, like, geez, Louis. So then I'm writing the article and I'm on the phone with Sean and she says, I'm talking, Sean and I are just kind of venting. And she goes, guys, winning's really hard. You should be not, winning's hard, just mocking Kelly. And then she's like, did you write that with a Southern accent when I'm writing the article about him getting fired? I'm like, dog, she's more savage about this than I am because she watched what I went through during his tenure. Vince, you know what I've went through during his tenure and the things he tried to do to me and my business and stuff like that. So yeah, I won't say that I'm happy about it, but I do think that just like there's vindication for Notre Dame that they weren't the problem, there's vindication for us to say, yeah, we were right. We saw this right. There was no beef there. Like, do I like Brian Kelly? No, I don't. I've never hit that fact, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to give him credit where credit is due. And it doesn't mean I'm just going to I'm just going to say things about him just because I don't like him if I don't believe it. Because what's more important to me than anything Brian Kelly could or couldn't do? My integrity and and saying, hey, look, I may be wrong about something, but I'm going to give you my honest opinion about it. And like, that's the thing for me is I do feel a sense of vindication from that. But also I feel vindication, Sean, and this is something I think you're going to be able to relate to. I feel vindication for defending Notre Dame against Brian Kelly and saying, you know what? I was right about Notre Dame. I was right about Brian Kelly. And it gives you hope that, okay, this is going to continue. Because if Brian Kelly would gone to LSU and done everything we didn't think he could have done, you'd have had to, based on what we're talking about, you'd have to look in the mirror and say, did I get it wrong?
Yeah.
Maybe it is Notre Dame. But the fact he was the same guy there that he is now, you know, there you go.
Yep. Well, this will be a day we'll all remember in Notre Dame history, even though it wasn't Notre Dame news. That's
right.
That's crazy.
Yep. So real quick, thoughts on LSU? Thoughts on
where they're going to go?
What you guys, where you guys think they should go? We don't know. We don't have inside sources. Where do you guys? Obviously, Lane Kiffin, Sean, you and I are texting about this. I think Lane Kiffin's sort of the hot coach right now.
You don't make this move right now.
At least talk to him.
Yeah, because the bidding war is now.
Yeah.
The fact that Lane Kiffin felt the need to speak to his team about what was to come in the news that was about to start heating up, the Florida is making a bid now. LSU knows, hey, if that's the guy we want, we have to go get. We can't be late to the party. We have to go get him now. And so I think that definitely, along with, of course, what's led to this point, he should. And to be honest, Lane Kiffin should be the number one guy for those top jobs, Mm-hmm. And then the strange news that broke, I believe, late last night with, Sarkisian being connected to the NFL or supposedly wanting an NFL job. It's just weird.
His agents have vehemently denied. So who knows what's true there. I'll say this about Lane Kiffin, Sean. I said going into last year that I wasn't a believer in Lane Kiffin, and to a degree going into this year, because he was always so 10 wins one year, 8 the next, 6th, but this is now 3rd year in a row. They're going to be, barring a collapse that I don't see happening. I mean, he went to talk to his team, and that's how they showed up after that. You know what I mean? Like, Trev, you and I were talking about that game, and you picked Ole Miss to win. I picked Oklahoma to win because I'm thinking there's too many distractions. Their offense is kind of, it's been okay, but, like this Oklahoma defense is legit, and they just coach circles around Oklahoma. And their players they weren't worried about the crowd in Norman. Like, that's not what we've seen from Lane Kiffin teams in the past, and maybe not even last year. His evolution as a coach the last couple of years has changed dramatically. And from talking to some sources that are familiar with him, I think part of it is a personal evolution that we've seen the last couple of years. Like as he grows up as a man, it starts to reflect in your coaching. And I've said this about Shane Beamer. I've heard nothing about Shane Beamer other than he's a good guy. What I mean by that is he's a very emotional guy. He's up and down emotionally. And guess what his team does? They're freaking up and down emotionally. You know what I mean? And when you're a head coach and you're kind of loosey-goosey and immature, then that's what your football team's going to look like. So I get the Lane Kiffin thing. Let's say he's not there. Let's say he doesn't want the job. Let's say he stays at Ole Miss. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion he's going to leave. But he has 2 great jobs in front of him, because I think Florida and LSU are both great jobs. I don't know that it's a hot market. I've heard Jeff Brom's name thrown around. I've seen Joe Brady's name thrown around. I don't think Joe Brady would be a great hire. Joe Brady didn't like to recruit when he was an assistant. And he's been an okay NFL OC. I don't know that he's been like a great NFL OC. Trev, you'd probably know a little bit more about that than I do. So would Sean and Vince. You guys would actually all know more about that than I would. I don't know that would be the case. Somebody said James Franklin. I know. Like, no,
I'm a firm believer that a lot of coaches in the SEC that have success have previous experience in the SEC. Yeah. And I think that's a proven try. I mean, look at Mike Elko. He was the defensive coordinator for A&M in 2021. And then he comes back, and look what A&M's doing now. And then obviously Kirby Smart is self-spoken for. Lane
after a couple of years as the head coach at Duke. Right.
Yeah. And so I think that somebody with previous SEC ties would work well. One name kind of flying under the radar a little bit that I'd keep my eye on I don't know if I'd put him near the top of the list, but I like what Ryan Grubb is doing at Alabama, and he now has play calling experience in the SEC. He was an NFL offensive coordinator as well. I think that one could be interesting too if things start to fall through.
I've seen looking at some different lists. I've seen Brent Key's name get thrown around. I don't know that I love that one. John Sumrall, I think, would be a pretty good hire, but I don't know that they're going to go. They're not. I don't see LSU hiring a guy from Tulane. Not saying they shouldn't. I'm just saying I have a hard time. But that one would make a lot of sense because the buyout would be a lot smaller, and his, you know what I mean. One name that I've seen kind of Elijah Drinkwitz. I've seen. Yep, somebody in the chat just said that. I've seen that one. Of course, Marcus Freeman's name is going to get brought up. Guys, he wouldn't even go there as a defensive coordinator for more money.
Correct.
He literally turned LSU down to be the D coordinator to take less money to come to Notre Dame. Why? His wife doesn't want to move down there. You think he's going to do that now? Come on, guys.
No chance.
It's all clickbait. Like I don't want to spend the next 2 months answering that question. Marcus Freeman
You will,
should have to
though.
answer that too.
You will, because that's going to be out there.
Take the LSU job.
No.
And just ridiculous. A name that I'm surprised at least the people I've looked at, I haven't seen more, is Dan Lanning. Trev, that fits kind of your thought of a guy with SEC experience. He was a D coordinator for Kirby. I think he was on the first title team?
I want to say he was on the 21. Right? Yeah, I want to say 21.
Yeah, because he was the first year, same year as Freeman, right? Mm-hmm. So he was their D coordinator on the first title team, and then not the second title team. The first title team, which, as we all remember, had a better defense than the 2022 team. But he's obviously a guy. He's from Missouri. He coached at Alabama for a year as a GA, coached at Georgia for 4 years, and now he's a head coach at Oregon. I'm surprised there aren't more people talking about that. I don't know if they have the money to buy him out. That's a problem when you got to pay Brian Kelly $50-some million, fellas. Is, well, what if, like, let's just say James Franklin was not James Franklin. Right? I'm just using this for argument's sake, and he was killing it at Penn State. Let's say they beat Notre Dame last year, and they go upset Ohio State in the title game, and they win it all, and they're 7-0 right now. But let's say he wanted to coach in the SEC again. Let's just say hypothetically, to make a point, you're not in Louisiana. It's going to be incredibly hard to pay $50 million to buy out Brian Kelly, and then also buy out his staff, and then have to go pay another $50+ million to buy out James Franklin and whatever assistant coaches he wants to go hire. Do you guys understand? Like, that is a $100 million something investment. That's going to limit some of your options for a head football coach. It just is. And I have to believe that Dan Lanning probably has a pretty decent sized buyout, but it's not going to be anything probably like James Franklin's. So I wonder how that does. And he may be happy there. And Clark Lee is not leaving Vanderbilt to go to LSU, I don't think. I'd be shocked by that. Neither's Mike Elko. Although I'll say this, Sean, I think Mike Elko has a great job, and I think he loves the job he has. He's the one guy that I think feels enough of, this is just my opinion, that has a strong enough feelings about Brian Kelly that are similar to ours, who would just be petty enough to say, I'm going to go to LSU and show Brian Kelly how to win at LSU. I could see that, but I don't think he would do that. Dan Mullins, he's not there anymore either. It's going to be interesting to see who they target if they don't get Lane. But, that's going to be very interesting. Very interesting.
I'm sure you guys will have this conversation sometime this week for a CFB Nation topic. But as of right now, on October 26th, it's almost the 27th, what's the best open job right now? If you were a head coach and you were being targeted by every school that's out there, what's the best job out there? So I think LSU's up towards the top, if it's not the top.
Problem there is asking it to me in that direction. There's other variables. Would I want to live in Baton Rouge?
Okay,
probably
fair
not.
enough.
I don't think I'd be a great fit in Baton Rouge. I'd be a better fit in Gainesville. I'd be a better fit in Blacksburg. I'd be, you know what I mean? Like, so there's that. But if we're just taking out fit and just ranking the jobs, I think LSU is the best job. I think Florida could be the best job, but it's such a train wreck right now. And it's such an unhealthy situation right now, and has been for a while, that I don't know that it's as good of a job as it should be.
Yeah.
That is a job, though, where the right coach can win a lot of games there. And what I mean by that is this is a program that Dan Mullen goes to back-to-back New Year's Six games and wins 10-plus games his first 2 years. Third year, goes to the SEC title game, loses that to Bama by 6, and then the next year they fire him after like 5-6 games. Like, that's a very delusional institution, but it does have great resources. It's actually a really good school. And there's a lot of money flowing into that program because it's got a really good research wing there. I had a friend of mine, Teresa, who was getting her PhD from there, and I learned a lot about that part of Florida's graduate programs and that are really good. And there's a lot of big donors, but there's just not a great leadership institutionally right now. Not that LSU is much, but I also think that there's a lot more kids in Louisiana that grow up wanting to play at LSU than there are kids at Florida that grow up wanting to play for Florida.
Sure.
Just the nature of
more
that
competition.
State.
I mean, if you're going to stay in Louisiana,
exactly.
you're either going to LSU or Tulane.
Vince, you know this. There's some states that just create more of a this is where I'm from.
Right.
Than other states. And I think Louisiana is one of those states.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, I just think it's like, I don't know, like, I mean, Trev, Vince, you guys grew up in Indiana. Like, do you guys like just bleed Hoosier red? Not for Indiana, but just like your identities around being a Hoosier? I'm asking. I grew up in Ohio, but I moved when I was 15. So like I kind of moved around. I never really had that. But even as a kid, I didn't feel like I'm a Buckeye through and through. It defines who I am. But there are some places where Texas is that way, like born and bred Texans and especially parts of Louisiana. And that's not a bad thing. I'm just saying there's just a different vibe. Sean, for some people, it's a city. I'm from Chicago or I'm from Norfolk, like I'm from New York, like whatever. I mean, it's for some people it's that way. And I think Louisiana is more that way than like Florida. Florida's a lot of families in Florida have only been there for one generation or two, where it seems to be a lot more families in Louisiana that are like this, like, man, you could trace it all the way back to the first, the generation that came here kind of thing. So I think that's part of it too. And a per capita, the talent in Louisiana is insane. It's really insane. Plus you can also still go recruit Florida. And I mean, you have one of the highest, if not the highest per capita NFL talents in the country. When you think about how small Louisiana is, and you border what states? Florida to the east and Texas to the west. So I just think that's a better job, but they're both great jobs, and I'd put Penn State a distant third in that conversation. I think the most underrated job, and if James Franklin was smart, this is the job he would be pushing hard for. I think Virginia Tech is a very underrated job. Great talent base, and I'm not just saying this. I'm a native Virginian, and I mean, just look at the track record. Look how many schools go into Virginia to recruit top players. There's great support at that school. Really good facilities. They've got NIL money. I think that's a hidden giant. And then you go to the playoff once or twice every 10 years, you can coach there the rest of your life. You won't if you go to Virginia Tech and you go to the semifinals 2 years after winning 10 plus games and you start 3-3 the next year, they're going to make every excuse in the world for you. Hey man, this is, we're rebuilding, blah, 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 blah. And that's why I think it's more attractive for some coaches now for that type of deal than for some of these other places where it's like you could be great for 3 years, but the one bad year you have, you're out. Like, well, who wants that mess?
I think it's about fit, right? I think it's about fit. I think the coolest thing about Marcus Freeman, he had audacity. It's something we talked about, Brian, when we start to see the kids that he was going after in his first full recruiting class. And we're like, yo, this dude is sitting down at the poker table with Kirby and Saban. Like, I'm here. I got less chips than you, but I'm here. What's up? Right? I might lose some kids. I might lose Keon Keeley at the end, but you see how long I got him? You see I got him? You better worry about me. I'm coming. And so I think the LSU job needs somebody coming in after Brian Kelly and Ed Orgeron that has that vibrato, like, to his name. or that persona. The Penn State job is actually interesting because they're showing money. The stadium, I think they have one of the biggest alumni NIL investments going right now. So they're like showing money, which is very attractive to a coach. And you made a great point talking about the Big Ten is really setting up their big boys to not have to play one another. So that's something else a coach would have to think about. Like, if I go to the Big Ten, maybe I have to play Ohio State and one other team this year. And that's really it. If I go to the SEC, I'm guaranteed to play 3 tough games for sure, 3 teams that I'll see annually. And then it's like a pick of the draw of what other tough games I might get. So that's like 4 to 5 tough games a year. So it's like you have to really think about, what fits you, what's best for you. I think if you step into that LSU, they have expectations. If you step into the Penn State situation, I think they're more like, okay, this is a build. Like, you go to LSU, the expectation is we win a national championship. I just don't think the expectations are the same at Penn State. I don't think they're the same at Virginia Tech.
They are at Florida. Yeah.
At Florida, yes. So that goes to what Trevor was saying. Like, what type of guy are you? Are you that guy that has the audacity as a head coach, or are you a guy that's much more comfortable rebuilding and taking your time and not having to deal with those type of expectations? So,
Sean, can I ask you a question? Do you think the standard at Penn State is changing? See, I agree with you. I think if you just win 10 plus games every year at Penn State before NIL, you could win every year. You're going to be loved. You're going to be, you know what I mean? Like, everybody, like Penn State fans, like, they like to make fun of Notre Dame fans for not having won since 1988, completely oblivious to the fact that they haven't won since 1986. But, like, it's just that mindset. If they win 10 plus games every year, they're happy. I think in the NIL where that's starting to change, even at Penn State, because you're asking us to spend $30, $40, $50 million a year in this program, not just to pay salaries of players, but also to pay coaches and to fire this guy and to all these other things. Like, I think the patience at a place like that is no, we're not happy with 10-2 every year anymore, especially since the last 2 national champions have come from the Big Ten. I think Ohio State and Michigan winning the titles the last 2 years has completely changed the narrative for Penn State's money people. Well, hold on. If we're going to be spending the same amount of money that Michigan's spending and Ohio State's spending, then we should be expecting the same results. So I think NIL has changed that a little bit for Penn State, Sean. What are your thoughts on that? And
we'll I agree, which is why I think it's very interesting for me looking at the Penn State administration. If I'm them and I really want to win, then I have to look myself in the mirror and ask myself, do we really want to win? It's one thing to say we have the money, but what are you about to spend your money on? Because if you're about to spend your money on somebody that's just going to continue to go out there and win 10 games and not really push the envelope or like make waves, I'm not saying they should go hire this person, but I'm just using the type of person that will make waves. If Penn State hired Fran Brown, they would scare the living heck out of top teams from a recruiting standpoint in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
If they went and got Fran Brown, people would pay attention. Recruits would pay attention. And people would start to think like, okay, what this is a little different. That's a little bit different personality than
Sean,
what Penn State is used to.
Can we be honest about something? Everybody talks about recruiting for Fran Brown. He's a great recruiter. Last 2 years, Fran Brown has more big wins than James Franklin does.
Yeah, he's a good coach too.
That's what I'm saying. Like, he beat Miami Clemson. If it wasn't for Steve Angeli getting hurt, they're at worst, 5-2 right now?
And that's just a type. I mean, so is that type, is it a Rhett Lashley at SMU, who I think should be on somebody's list for one of these jobs?
I think somebody in the chat just said this too. I think Fran Brown would make more sense at Florida than Penn State, though. Just because of his background.
background.
and the
I can see
connection
that.
he has.
Yeah. I can
I
see
think
that.
I think there's greater sustainability. There's some other reasons I think he'd be a better fit at Florida than Penn
Yeah.
State, but we don't need to go there in this,
Yeah.
show.
No, that's why I said type. That's why I just said I'm using this guy as a type. I'm not saying go get him because I don't.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But the problem is they've had that for a while, and I think they're looking for someone that can just flat out coach. That's why I think there's some interest in like Cignetti and Matt Rule. I think Matt Rule's a very overrated coach, but the reputation is he knows how to build a program and coach. That was his reputation before he got to Nebraska. Now, I don't buy it, but I'm saying that's the reputation, because usually when you fire a coach, you're going to want to hire someone that's the anti that coach. And I think that's what would hurt Fran Brown for the Penn State job. Is everything you said is correct, but that sounds a lot like who James Franklin was. Great motivator, great recruiter. Oh, he's a very good recruiter at Penn State. Yes. Oh, absolutely.
No, I just don't. I don't know.
Evaluator of talent.
That's two totally different.
Motivator.
Two totally different. They move totally different.
Sure, but what
they
I'm saying
totally
is what they're
different.
known for is recruiter. Now, how they like James Franklin's not running around headbutting players for a game. Like how they do it's different. But what are the three things that Fran Brown is motivated for? Players love him. Great recruiter. Great motivator. Trev, when we were talking about Penn State this offseason, what were we saying about James Franklin? Great. Players seem to like him. Great recruiter. Great motivator. Bad game day coach. Now, I don't think we can say the bad game day coaches thing is true for Fran Brown, but he hasn't built that reputation yet because he hasn't been there long enough. And I'm simply saying that usually, I'm not saying he's not a fit. This isn't about me and you debating is Fran Brown a fit. This is me just pointing out, I think that actually might scare Penn State because it sounds so much like what they had. It's not enough of an antithesis of who they had. That's just how a lot of these coaches do it. When you fire a coach, you want someone that's the very opposite of him. And that's the thing that hurt Fran Brown. Now, at Florida, he is the polar opposite of Billy Napier at Florida.
Yeah.
Because Billy Napier was not a recruiter. He was not a motivator, and just not a guy that you felt like the players would go through the wall for. You give Fran Brown if he can get there, let's say you were just able to get him quickly, they would retain that almost an entire roster. And then they'd start recruiting high school kids way better.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I think the Florida fit would make a ton of sense on top of his SEC background because he is the antithesis or the anti-Billy Napier. He's not the anti-James Franklin, which is why I think you're hearing like Bob Chesney, Matt Rule, Kurt Cignetti as being named for that job. So, but everything you said about Fran Brown and the fit there is spot on. It's not me disagreeing with you at all about your analysis. It's just does Penn State leadership have the intelligence to look at it that way? He is.
I think Cignetti would be what Penn State would need. Somebody that has audacity. Like, dude, I'm not scared of Ohio State. Like, let's go. Because Matt Rule, look, you're right. Man, I think Preston made a very good point as well. Because we could sit here and on the surface just say LSU without question is the best job. But as this NIL era continues, with the lack of, spending that he spoke about, like, are they really? Is that program still a top 5 job? Is it more now of a top 15 in the NIL era? Or will it depend on the person that comes in? He made a great point because I never really looked at it like that. Louisiana isn't the wealthiest state. And I think with the situation now with the governor, having input, and they're trying to find not only a head coach, but an athletic director, right? Somebody that's going to run things, or a president, shall I say, to run things. That's twofold. So what comes first? Do they hire the president first and then let the president hire his guy? Or do they hire the football coach and then just hire a president to kind of like manage things, or be a puppet or figurehead when, I think, who wrote this article? Ross Dellinger on Yahoo has a great article. Like, he said they literally were, as the game was in the waning moments, they were upstairs in the suites passing around the collection plate. Like, how much you got on this buyout? Like, how much do you get? I'm like, yo, that's crazy. Like, decision is made. We just, how are we gonna divvy up this 53 million? Like, I need somebody in the $10 million line right over here. I need somebody in the $500,000 line right over here. It's like, for him to put that in a story, which I'm sure he confirmed, that I just think that was very interesting, because if they have this buyout and they don't have the deep pockets that the other schools have, which it was confusing to us after all the championships to hear Nick Saban telling the alumni, hey, we need money. And it's like, man, what have you been doing with the revenue that's been coming in with all these championships? So to see all of these schools that are known for football, but might not be known as the wealthiest places or states in the country, and now that NIL comes into place, I think places like Pennsylvania, Florida, other states that are a little bit wealthier, maybe they do end up having some type of advantage, when it comes to how they pitch these jobs. LSU to me is the best job. Just looking on the surface of what college football is, recruiting, yes, it's number one.
Yeah.
But if you're in a room making a pitch, how can their pitch kind of stand up to a Florida?
Yeah.
That's where I'm looking at it from. Like, Florida probably has a lot more to offer in this NIL space.
Florida is a better job if it was run more competently, but it's not.
Yeah.
That's my point. Right now, I think LSU's a better job. Vince, I'd love to get your thoughts on this before we wrap up with super chats, and then I was going to kick it to Trev, but we'll get him when he gets back. So, Vince,
it's pretty. I mean, you guys pretty much hit the nail on the head. When I first look at these jobs, I think LSU is probably the best one. I think Florida's a close second, and then I think there's a gap after that. As far as prestigious jobs, able to win right away, all of those kinds of things. I think right now LSU has a better roster than Florida, so it's going to be, if you get the right guy in there, I think they can turn it around faster at LSU than you can at Florida. It's not bare at Florida, but there's just so much more to rebuilding that program than there would be to rebuild LSU. So I think right now, LSU is the better job.
Because I think that the new LSU coach has a much better job of retaining that talented class than the Florida coach does of building a class, because Napier hasn't recruited well.
That's exactly right. Yeah, 100%. And there's just more building blocks that are in place right now at LSU for a new coach coming in than there would be at Florida. And Florida fans are going to have to get on board with the fact that this is going to take a minute for them to kind of get back. Yeah,
well, you can spend a bunch of money. Ruined.
That's true.
Trev, Kurt Cignetti has ruined patience for so much. Like, this guy can win at Indiana. We're not going to wait 3 or 4 years for you to turn around Florida or LSU or Penn State. You know what I mean? Like, unfortunately, that's the case. Trev, what are your thoughts on just real quick on these? Like, how would you rate these? I think we all agree that these are the 3 best open jobs. I wouldn't put UCLA or Virginia Tech quite on that level of these jobs, but Florida State could eventually come open. I don't think Florida State's as good of a job as any of those other 3. It's just my opinion. But Trev, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, it's the same order as you guys. I'm not going to harp on it. I'm going to LSU and then Florida and then a distant third Penn State. You get a good person in at Penn State, you're still going to be the little brother of the Big Ten. It's just that you could get an all-star coach in and you'll be 10-2 because that's what your fan base has shown that you're happy with. Now, you can't go 3-3 and not have a single, Power 4 win yet. Like, you can't do that. But that fan base has shown, as much as they want to dish it out to other people because they ride on the coattails of other teams being successful in the Big Ten, you'll go 10-2 every year and you'll have a job for life at Penn State. That is their standard. I will not be convinced differently from their fan base.
100%.
But LSU, number one, I think that they're the most apt to win quickly. I think big turnaround quickly. So yeah, I got LSU as the top spot there.
I think, Trev, I think it was you. We were talking about Penn State a couple weeks ago. I think you said, and I agree with it wholeheartedly, that Penn State will never be better than the third best job in the Big Ten. And until Phil Knight passes away, they'll never be better than fourth.
Yep.
And that's assuming you don't think USC is a better job than them.
Mm-hmm.
LSU is at worst, the third best job in the SEC. At worst.
Agreed.
Behind Alabama and Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's distantly behind those two programs. If it even is. I think you can make a better argument for LSU being in the top two over Bama or Georgia than you could for Penn State being ahead of Ohio State or Michigan.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in the same light, I can make an argument why Florida State's a much better job than the Penn State job. I mean, I think they have a quicker track to winning the ACC than what Penn State does in the Big Ten.
Although those idiots are trying to get out of the ACC. Just stupid. Ask Oklahoma how that's gone for them so far, but whatever. Vince, we want to work through some super chats before we get out of here.
Yeah, let's do it. It is now a new day, so got to get moving here.
Hey, and I know that I've dominated a lot of this conversation, and Sean dominated a lot of it, and you guys have just kind of had to sit there and listen. But I do appreciate both you guys getting on tonight, as late as it was. I do appreciate you guys doing that. Let's get rolling.
Brian O'Donnell, thanks for the super chat. Tiger Bait gave you props for being correct. We know that.
Yeah, I was actually in that show, watched a little bit of the post-game show last night. So, and they did. I think Preston was more willing to do that than Mike Scarborough was, but I just think Mike was pissed off last night. He's a long-time LSU reporter. He's been covering that team for a long, long time, and I just think he kind of spoke for what I think a lot of LSU fans were feeling last night, which was just anger and disgust for what he witnessed. So I didn't take it personally, but
been there.
I get some of his frustration. Absolutely.
Scott Mersinger, thank you very much for the super chat. BK made a lot of money convincing people that he had success at Notre Dame despite quote-unquote hurdles. One guy admittedly rebuked that statement for years, Brian Driscoll. Now the proof is in the pudding. Way to stick up for your beliefs, Brian.
Guys, I tell you this all the time. Trevor and Vince know this. I'll be wrong about things. I flat out will be wrong about things. Heck, I picked Notre Dame to beat Miami, Texas A&M. I was clearly wrong on that. But you'll always get my honest opinion, or you won't hear it. Like there's certain things I can't share, and I just don't say it. But I'm never going to lie to you. I'm never going to tell you something I don't believe. Whether it means to protect Notre Dame. I'm not an alum. I don't have to look at it the same way that my friends who went to Notre Dame, former players and stuff, look at it. That's not my job. I answer to you guys, not Notre Dame. And I'll always be. And I think, honestly, if you truly care about something, you're willing to call it out. So, I mean, we're all married men. If our wife is dealing with something bad, we're not just going to sit down and let her, if she's got an eating disorder, I'm going to sit there and just let her go through it because I just want her to be happy. I love her too much to criticize. No, I love her. I'm going to seek help and let her know what's going on because I do love her, so appreciate that, Scott.
Jeffrey Hudgen, thank you so much for the super chat. As Ice Cube said, quote, today was a good day.
Yes, it was. I may just go rent a convertible, put on my checkered flannel shirt, just drive around pumping that song. I'll go pick up Trev, pick up Vince. We'll do that. That'll be fun.
Sean Michael, thanks for the super chat. Brian, you are vindicated, good sir. What do you think LSU's next move is? We kind of just talked about that. Thoughts on coaching changes mid-season and next move for Brian Kelly. Does any open jobs take a chance? You guys are the best. You're the best, Sean.
I appreciate that, Sean, very, very much. Next move, look, I think they've got to go for a home run hire here. Now, I don't think home run necessarily means big name. They got to go for, if they think If they think Alex Golesh or John Sumrall are elite talents and just need that opportunity, then freaking go hire them. I'm cool with that. I'm not someone who's like, you got to hire a Power 4 head coach with head coaching experience. Well, that would think of the names of the coaches that would knock off your list. Kirby Smart, off the list. Dan Lanning, off the list. Kurt Signetti, off the list. Dabo Sweeney, off the list. That guy up in South Bend, Marcus Freeman, off the list. Ryan Day, off the list. Now, some of those coaches benefited by they were either hired by their alma mater in Kirby Smart's sense, or they were promoted in the program they were already at. It's easier to do. It's easier to hire Marcus Freeman in a promotion manner than it is to go outside the program and hire someone who's never been a head coach. So I get it, but it's got to be a home run hire. And by home run, I don't mean PR home run, because that lasts 5 minutes. And then when the guy starts doing the job, I think it's someone that you truly believe can be a home run hire, can go win you a championship. And if you got to take some flack from some boosters, then take some flack, or take some flack from fans, or, podcasters like myself. How could you hire this guy? Well, you know what? USC's AD took a lot of flack for hiring Pete Carroll. Don't think he takes flack for it anymore. So Clemson took a lot of flack for making Dabo the interim coach and then keeping him after a couple down years. Don't think he gets flack for that anymore. You know what I mean? What's next for BK? Look, someone will make the decision to hire him. Just because, as Trevor said earlier, Brian Kelly's a good football coach. He's just not a Notre Dame, LSU, Florida, Penn State caliber football coach.
There's a lot of jobs that he could take and be good.
Like honestly, who would be a better head coach for Penn State? I'm being dead serious here. Brian Kelly or Matt Rule?
Penn State thinks they're too good, though. They won't hire him.
I get that, but they're too
I
good
don't
for
disagree
Matt Rule.
with you. Yeah.
Neither of those guys should be on the board for Penn State, in my opinion. But Brian Kelly's a far more proven coach than Matt Rule. Who's a more proven coach, Brian Kelly or Bob Chesney from JMU? Now, who's doing a great job at JMU? I get that. But honestly, somebody will, and as these dominoes fall, somebody's going to panic and feel like they're out left in the cold. If you'd have told me 5 years ago LSU's going to go hire Brian Kelly, I'd have laughed at you. There's no way LSU's going to hire Brian Kelly. You got to be nuts to think that LSU's going to want Brian Kelly. And here we are. So, but which job that is, guys, I don't think it's any of the open jobs. I think it's a job that comes open later by either firing someone later, Florida State, or a job where, because to schools like Florida State who are financially challenged, the idea of hiring Brian Kelly is going to be very attractive because there's zero buyout. You don't have to pay him a dime. Same with James Franklin. Something like that. Somebody panics. Somebody loses their coach to replace someone else, and they'll hire him. I could also see Brian Kelly choosing to wait a year and just take a year off and think about, do I really want to do this thing or not? And then get something that's open next year. Because that's actually smart too, Trev. All the good jobs get taken, all the good young candidates get taken this year, and then next year it's like the pool's a little bit thinner. I don't know. Appreciate that, Sean. Do you guys have anything else to add to that? You guys have any thoughts on this would be a good hire or this would be a good move? This school would be smart to hire Brian Kelly.
I mean, this is going to come off sounding really rude, and I don't know if it's just because it's late. Any school that doesn't have aspirations of winning a national championship, I'm sorry, but like I said, he is not a championship caliber head coach. That doesn't mean he sucks. He's going to get you 9-10 wins a season outside of, the random one where he won't. But he'll always keep you around the conversation. I watched him do it at Notre Dame for 11 years. But if you are a school that doesn't have true aspirations of winning a national title, hire Brian Kelly.
Which is the majority of the schools out there, right,
yes.
Trev? I mean, yeah.
Brian Smith texted me, and I think he might have tweeted this out, but he texted me before the show, and he goes, don't sleep on Brian Kelly at Michigan State if they decide to fire Jonathan Smith.
He's already had 2 head coaching jobs in Michigan. He's,
and won at both of them.
Yeah.
Or if Maryland keeps going down if Maryland keeps going down a bad road. Well, I mean, get him back out to the East
That's
Coast.
that's the kind of job that would make sense. Not even like, and I'm being dead serious. Like I would be like, that's a good hire.
Yeah.
Because he'll bring some stability, to a place like that with no expectations.
Sure.
Yep, agree.
I could see that. Just then we need to get Michigan State and Maryland back on the Notre Dame schedule. All right.
There you go. Well, Michigan State's on it next year.
Yeah,
that's also part of it. So, yeah.
Can you even?
That's why Brian Kelly probably wouldn't want the Michigan State job.
Oh, that'd be so great, though. All right. Beefeater ND08, thank you so much for the super chat. Funny how nobody's talking about Ryan Day for the head coach openings, but Freeman is everyone's first name.
Well, I get what you're trying to do there. That's a little misleading because everybody knows there's no way in heck Brian. I mean, most people view Ohio State as an elite job. A lot of these people, I was almost said the C word, sounds like nouns, begins with a C, has an L in it. They still don't view Notre Dame as being that kind of job. They don't view Notre Dame as being on the same level as LSU in Florida. And what I keep trying to tell people is maybe that was true back in the day, but now facilities wise and money wise, they are absolutely on par with everybody else. And Marcus Freeman is proving that you can recruit anywhere if you are the right person in Notre Dame. So, but everybody knows Ryan Day's not leaving Ohio State, unless you're an NFL team.
Yeah, I mean, the dude won a national championship 10 months ago.
Right.
He's not leaving Ohio State.
No, and he's the number one team in the country right now.
Right. Like I get the point you're trying to make, Beefeater, but I get why no one's bringing the click. Even the clickbait artists have a line that they won't cross.
Yeah. Beard dye.
CW Pura, thank you for the super chat. Thanks, guys. Karma.
Sometimes there's bad karma, sometimes there's good karma, and I hope that some good karma comes to CW Pura, because let me tell you guys a little story. Won't say who he is. But you guys remember when my mom had that real bad surgery a few years ago? So my friend right here is a doctor in the area where my mom lives. Does not work at the hospital where my mom was at. Drove to the hospital to go check on my mom and see how she was doing, do all that kind of stuff. That's the kind of guy this guy is. So I just had to point that out, and I thank you for your super chat, because
I will also say
karma can be a good thing as well.
He reached out to me as well when I had my stuff and what I've got going on, and was very, was awesome.
And you know what, Vince? He's probably not happy that we're talking about what he's done.
You're probably right about that.
But
he offered counsel and any kind of questions that I had. So yeah,
person. Thanks, Doc. Really we appreciate you very much.
Yeah. Anthony Solomon, thanks for the super chat. Thanks for the show, gentlemen. Karma came for BK today.
Yes, it did.
The other kind that you
reap what you sow. Cincinnati and Notre Dame fans rejoicing today.
Let Manager One from Canada, thank you for the super chat. Full circle moment for me. Found IB the night Brian Kelly left Notre Dame. Thanks, BK, for that. Go Irish.
That's very much thanks, BK, for that.
Infamy,
that paid the mortgage for a couple months.
Yeah, it did.
That showed it.
Yes, it did. It's the first and only time I've ever been kicked out of my other job because I was there too late. So,
yes.
That's great. Lou Holtz, Thunder and Bolts, thank you so much for the super chat. I never minded him leaving. I despise his attempts to smear Notre Dame's commitment to winning and her caliber of players. Darn right, it's personal. See ya.
You're speaking for a lot of Notre Dame fans, buddy. A lot of Notre Dame fans.
Erica Seifert, the video of Verge Osbury, who looked pissed, talking if with BK immediately after the game. I knew he was gone. Oh, that was the associate athletic director. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's Jaden Osbury's dad, and he works at LSU.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, that was an interesting situation.
You could tell by the way he walked away that it wasn't a great conversation. I mean, let's be honest. It was not a great. Yeah, it was not a great conversation. Florida.
That's why he acted so calm and I don't. I get why he was a completely different person in the postgame press conference.
That started
took him forever
very
to get
late.
There. Very late. Believe me, he knew.
Yeah,
he knew.
Well, go back. Can you go back?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Florida Irishman, thanks for the super chat. Thank you for the live show. Really needed this.
I think we kind of did as well.
Yeah,
I think so. At least I did. I think me and Vince did.
About it. I'm not upset about it.
Well, Vince, you didn't.
I'm just here to hang out, baby.
Yeah.
What's that, Brian?
I told Trev, you don't have to be here. And he was like, I'm coming. But like for you and I, it's a little bit different because like we did do that one show.
Yeah, we did.
And you and Sean are probably the only people that really know what I went through in that last 3 years of the Brian Kelly era.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I went through the year after he left.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so yeah, it's like, oh yeah, we're doing a show tonight. It's just
That's personal.
and I wasn't going
let's
to
be
do one
honest,
at
it's
first. I
personal.
really wasn't going to do one at first, but I just saw I got a bunch of DMs posting the board like, you guys got to go live tonight. I was like, all right, cool. We'll go live tonight.
Ed3, thank you for the super chat. Turns out if you can't win big games at Notre Dame, you won't win them at LSU either.
Facts.
Sorry. That's great.
Facts.
That's awesome.
Absolutely true.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right, Lou Holtz, thanks for the second super chat. Appreciate you very much. This offseason is about to be nuts. Demand for top head coaches will surely exceed the supply. What top coordinators will be on the move to take a top head coaching job?
It's a great question. I mean, the first guy that pops in my head is Will Stein at Oregon. I don't know why, but it won't be for the Penn States, the Florida. It'll be for replacing guys that take those jobs or some other jobs to come open. The Marylands, the Virginia Techs. It won't be for Penn State, Florida State, LSU type jobs. But I mean, that's one that certainly pops in my head. I did hear Brian Hartline's name mentioned for the Penn State job. No, he's been a coordinator for 1 year, and their offense isn't even that great. Like, like what? No. But a lot of the top coordinators in college football right now are other guys who are like kind of older who are past the head coaching time.
Like Mike
You
Denbrock.
think Jim Knowles, Mike Denbrock. I'd still look at Mike Denbrock because that's one of the youngest 60-year-olds I know.
No doubt
Like,
about it.
Like, not just energy-wise, but just his personality.
Yeah.
He's 60 going on 35. I mean,
Yeah.
and I mean that as a compliment. Like, he's got tons of energy. He can relate to the players really well. It just, yeah, he's a different kind of cat. I still don't know if that's something he's ever really been interested in.
All right.
Don't just read the super chat. I have no clue what the rest of that said.
That's just a lot of letters. Thanks for
Yes.
the super chat. LSU fan here. Does anyone have Marcus Freeman's number? No, we don't. I lost it when you asked for it.
Lost it.
I
Sorry.
do have it. I'm just not going to give it to you.
Unfortunate voting accident.
Yeah. Sharp. Thanks for the super
If you like
chat.
rejection, I can give it to you. Sure, go for it.
Yeah, right. I lived in Bama for 11 years. LSU is my SEC team and only hope through Weiss BK years. BK con man, his hubris always catches up with him. Hope LSU takes the SEC championship next year. Go Tigers.
Oh, I'm absolutely rooting for LSU to become the dominant team in the SEC after Brian Kelly. And then I get a laugh at all the Brian Kelly stands that are still out there that are like, well, he won with Brian Kelly's players. So
wouldn't that be great?
Yeah. Yes. And I agree with that, Vince.
I figured.
Yep.
Packer fan total access. I don't know how don't appreciate that one, but whatever.
No, he's a good dude. He's at least a Notre Dame fan. I know you're a Bears fan, but he's at least a Notre Dame fan.
I'm just kidding. Packers went with the all white.
So Clayton
jerseys
actually, the Packer fan total access. That's actually his podcast.
Oh, cool.
So he does a Packers podcast.
I hope you have success with that.
Yes.
What'd you feel about those all white Packer jerseys?
Except when they play the Bears. Vince.
Yeah, exactly. Even though the Bears usually lose. Clayton here. Great show, guys. Thank you for your time. Preston, which was awesome, by the way.
Yeah, appreciate you, thanks, Clayton.
Joe, our buddy Joe. How you doing, Joe? Thank you for the super chat. BK took all the credit when Notre Dame won, but deflected responsibility and ownership when losses occurred. That's not how a leader acts. He got very, very lazy as the years moved on. I honestly feel the players won to spite him.
Well, Trev, you've been listening to it. You told me that you listened to our show back. Wasn't you say your first show was the BK, or was it the Bama post game? Which one did you say?
Bama post game.
Most people, they say I found out about you guys after the Bama game, or I found out about you guys after BK was fired. That's normally the story we get. I couldn't remember which one was for you. So then you remember, Sean and I have made this case for a long time that, especially in the later years, that Brian Kelly won in spite of. I mean, the players won in spite of Brian Kelly. Mm-hmm. It was Matt Bayless, the players, Clark Lee, Mike Elko, Chip Long. Those are the reasons that Notre Dame had the success they had. And people want to hate on Tom Rees all you want, but Tom Rees also coordinated an offense that went and played in the college football playoffs. And Tommy Rees also is the guy that recruited the entire depth chart at quarterback right now for Notre Dame. So just want to throw that out there as well.
Nikki Sandouche, D21. Thanks, Nikki, for the super chat. I tried to find you guys at the ND USC game, but was unsuccessful. I would like to send you a great present. Can you present that you can wear on the show when you officially close the gap? Can you send me your address to send it to you?
Nikki, I have your email. Just reply to the email that you sent to me, and it'll pop it back up. I'm about 575. Let me see, 423 emails behind. I got some done. Got caught up a little bit tonight. But yeah, I got that email. Just shoot me just reply to it so it boosts it back up to the top, and I'll send you the business address.
I would start getting the itch if I had that many like unread emails. Like I couldn't do
That's
it.
why I just checked out and stayed off my computer this morning. I was like, look,
good for you. Mike Nolan, thanks for the super chat. BK on the headset, unless he is listening to Fox News, why doesn't he tell the coordinators to call something else? Unless he's listening to Fox News, why doesn't he say to change the calls? Say change the call.
Well, at times he will, but this all happens real fast. Like, yes, you've got 25 seconds from the time the ball is spotted. As we've seen with Brian Kelly, with how many timeouts they have to take, sometimes the calls don't get sent in until late. It's harder to do that. I mean, especially when you've gone through the week and you've gone through the game plan and you've discussed, we're going to call this and we're going to call that and those type of things.
Right.
I mean, like you also, to a degree, trust your coaches and then berate them afterwards, as Brian Kelly does all the time for calls that they made. And he was correct in his evaluation to Joe Sloan. You can't make that call. You can't throw that ball there. Now, Joe Sloan might have said, hey, coach, that's not where the ball was supposed to go. That guy was running a route to distract this guy. Garrett threw I mean, who knows what was said, but you can't throw that ball there in third down when you don't have any timeouts left and there's 20-something seconds left. Like, So, man, I get that, but it happens. It happens. But it's hard to just say, no, do it. Well, then, coach, what do you want to call? I mean, that conversation right there, that's 25 seconds. Timeout. But when they call timeouts, there will be times where Brian Kelly say, no, we're not doing that. We're going to do this, just like all coaches do. So, I mean, he does that to a degree. I think this is our LSU fan again. LSU fan, y'all got any more of them coaches? Sure.
I mean,
I guess we do. Yes,
yeah.
We absolutely. Hey, here's a number. I don't know what there's a guy, national champion, got a big old national championship ring. His name's Chris Ash. You can hire him as your new head coach. Or you can call down guys building a Joe Moore Award winner, Joe Rudolph. He's going to bring toughness back to your program. You can call him too, and then have fun with that. So, but those guys can get those opportunities. I'd be happy about that.
Michael S., thanks for the super chat. Anti-Irish prejudice rears its ugly head again in the Protestant South. Yeah, but Louisiana is very Catholic. Just FYI.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what that means, but that's a very Catholic institution.
Very
state.
Very, yeah.
Yes.
All you got to do is
you were down there in January.
New Orleans, and like it's a very, very,
very Catholic state. There's a lot of Catholic schools still in Louisiana too that produce good football players.
ND Wine and Cheese, thanks for the super chat. There's a lot of teams emotionally firing head coaches that are going to realize their team might not be as sought after as they thought and regret the firing.
I think Penn State falls into that category.
Yeah,
very much. I think LSU had to fire Brian Kelly after last night. Like let's just say, guys, the second half played out the same way the first half did, but LSU just A&M just kind of won it at the end like they did against Notre Dame. Just go down this last drive. LSU takes a lead. A&M goes right back, kick it in, and you win 35-34 in a walk-off. Brian Kelly's not fired today. He's not fired today. It was the way they lost and the manner in which he conducted himself on the sideline during that games. I mean, Trev, I don't know if you've had a chance to actually go back and watch the full game because I know you were, busy last night I think you were still at the wedding, right? Like when the game was being played. But like, I don't know if you had a chance to go back. It was embarrassing. It was like worse than anything I've ever seen. Like, it was the TJ Jones versus South Florida thing the whole game. Like, it was bad. Even when they were winning, he was just losing his mind during that game. And you could just see Vince, I think you said it, the interaction between him and Garrett Nussmeier look like, you guys know that married couple that it doesn't take a whole lot to set them off, and they're just constantly like talking down to each other because they don't like each other, but they don't want to get a divorce. That's Brian Kelly and Garrett Nussmeier last night. That was their whole body language last night. It was bad. So it wasn't even just the fact they lost 49-28 or 25. It was the way that he just kept getting shown, just losing his mind. And then when the game got bad, just the arm crossover, like,
well, and then everything that happened afterwards too. Like, half the players didn't even stay for the alma mater. You had some leaving the field early. You had Brian Kelly having to stay
left at first.
Yeah, I know.
To take it back out there. Yeah,
I know.
They checked out. It was a lot like Vince, Trev, Vince and I will remember this, but that's a lot of this post game sentiment that we heard in the locker room after the Duke game in 2016. It's like, I'm not playing for that guy anymore. Like, I'm not playing for that dude anymore. Talking about Van Gorder. So, yeah. And then this last one from Randall North. Thank you, Randall, with the absolutely most adorable avatar anywhere with that little puppy. But Randall asks, who from IB is going to Boston? That guy right there.
That'd be me, Randall.
Yep.
That'd be me.
So, yep. Are you excited about it?
I am.
I was sitting there, I was talking to Ange. Ange wanted to go do something. She wanted to go do something on Friday. She wanted to go see some stuff for church. And I was like, I think I'll call Trev and see if he wants to do the RTCF with Sean. And I was like, oh, wait, never mind. That's not an option. Sorry, honey. Trevor's going to be flying. So
I'll be mobile.
Is this first time in Boston?
Yep. I think mine and Lauren's first time in Boston.
Okay.
So
very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, folks, that's going to do it for tonight's show. I appreciate y'all being with us. And Trev and I'll be back tomorrow at 1:00. We're going to kind of preview. Now that we got this over, Trev, we can kind of stick to what we're going to do. So we're going to actually go live tomorrow. We normally don't go live on Mondays, but since we don't have any film to break down, I can actually make time for a show. So Trev and I'll go one. We'll talk about Marcus Freeman's press conference. We'll talk about what's at stake for Notre Dame this week against Boston College. Dive a little bit of that. Tuesday, we'll dive into the matchup, a little bit more about BC, a little bit more about Notre Dame. Wednesday, we'll do our keys to victory and a daily mailbag. We might do one, Tuesday as well. Thursday, we'll do our prediction show. Friday will be RTCF. And then Saturday, after Notre Dame whoops up on BC, we will have a postgame show. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Trev and I, 1:00 this week every day, except till Friday. Then it'll be me and Sean Davis. Postgame show will be me, Vince, and Sean. And Trev's going to get to enjoy himself a little bit of Boston. So we gotta have the clam chowder while you're over there, man. It's legitimately New England clam chowder is legit on
clam chowder and lobster rolls, baby. I'm pumped.
Yep, there you go. And if you get some time to drive up the East Coast up into like New Hampshire, if you just want to go cruising, absolutely beautiful scenery this time of year. I did that because when I flew out of Boston in 2015, my flight left later in the day, so I just had my rental car, just took it up. And just absolutely stunning beauty in New Hampshire.
Nice.
Just because the leaves were changing, it's just absolutely beautiful.
The foliage.
So, it was beautiful. So it was the drive. I had to go pick Ange up from Scotts, Michigan today, actually. We went to this place. She was staying there with a friend of hers on the lake. And then we went to this place in, I think it's for Portage, maybe? It's called Anna's House for breakfast. Great food. But on the drive back, we're just taking all the back roads. Absolutely beautiful this time of year. So yeah, enjoyed that. But so 1:00 Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Me and Trev, Vince, you'll be on what Monday? What days will you be on IB Nation Sports Talk this week?
Monday, Wednesday, Friday, as far as I know.
There we go. And then post-game show. So thanks everybody for being with us. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. If you're sharing it and listening to this podcast on a podcast platform, we'd love a 5-star review. But the absolute best way to support what we're doing at Irish Breakdown is to join the message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com. We'll talk to you all again here very soon. Thanks for being with us tonight on the Irish Breakdown podcast.
Presented by FanDuel.